progress.
So we're live.
We're live. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Nerdy Up North podcast. It's a nerdy podcast and it's hosted by Northern Nerds. I am one of your hosts, Sam.
And I am the other host, Paul, and we are joined today by, like I say, some amazing guests.
Beautiful room tonight.
Yes, there's a lot of people that's like been on the podcast before, but they've not been on together. So it is going to be interesting. So we have the enigmatic Graeme. Basically, you don't know what shit's going to come out. He did actually refer to himself as Hitler before we went. Was it dead Hitler or not? What kind of Hitler? So Hitler has already been talked about. Gay Hitler. So yes.
We were talking about how we were like Jessica had put like some good lipstick on so it'd show up on the black and white filter, and I was like, oh, I should have done that, but then musing about the fact I'd look like a vaudeville villain or gay Hitler, and I'm just like, oh, that's not really what I like. Hitler. But yes. At the moment, I'll just be an egg with some facial hair stuck on it. So it's all that guy from Star Wars. I keep making the joke, but literally,
the headphones are getting bigger. But yes, and we are joined by the wonderful Dan from Blade and Marvelous again. Like I say, she is becoming a bit of firm fan favourite as well, so she's getting her own little audience. Like I say, everyone seems to love her or wants to be on with her now. I actually am getting requests from the people of the team, send us private message in, I want to be on with Dan, so...
They're all drunk.
Yes.
All drunk.
Yes, and we have got the beautiful Jessica, who is looking like a movie starlet from the 50s right here and now, putting us all to shame.
Massively. Thanks, Jessica.
Well, one of us made an effort. Christ. To be fair though, I was musing about, you know how we were talking in the chat about basically like dressing up as like Universal monsters for this, but none of us could be bothered. I really wanted to try and dress up as Dracula and like paint the black sort of widow's peak on with like Snazaroo or whatever. But then I was just realized, then do the entire episode like the Count from Sesame Street. Where, how many years since Thatcher's death? One.
He started again. He started already, guys. But yes, it'd be quite amusing if how hot it was getting if the ink started running down your forehead and start like saying,
that's it. I'll be like Gary Oldman in The Fifth Element.
Yes.
You're right. Brilliant.
So yes, so this episode, we have talked about doing this episode for quite a while, but we've never really had like the people to be involved with this type of episode. I know we were meant to have another member involved, Charlotte, but like I say, a pooch is not very well. So hope Ruby does like get better, and like I say, we are thinking about you, Charlotte. I know you're in the chat, so hopefully things do like pull around for Ruby there. But yes. So
we are thinking of you massively, and hi to the chat as well. Wow, you guys are on fire already.
I'm ignoring the chat tonight. They're all pissed. They're all morons. So
Goodwill's in there, so it's all right.
He's drunkest out of them all. He's been to the pub today with Jake. So
ready for the lickings. He's ready for the lickings tomorrow.
Yes.
You just wait, Michael. You just wait.
So yes, to get the promo out as well. So with it being a bank holiday weekend, the Nerdy Up North team are going to Nerdfest at Force. We will have our own little table. We'll have a banner as well, so we'll not be that hard to spot. So please come and see us. And we will be having a few games and little like tasks for the Nerdy Up North members to win prizes. And not like I discussed off air. If you rub me head, you won't win the cosplayer competition, because that will get me in trouble. Yes.
You're also not a judge.
Yes.
So
I could be now after a judge has pulled out, so I might just put myself back in. And to be fair, I can do the fuck what I want. So.
Interim.
But yes, so I just had to be having a little Napoleon complex out the way there, so that's fine. But yes, so we have been wanting to do this episode for quite a while, and everyone has been good this week, because normally we just wing it, but we have all been doing our homework and
I always prepare. You know me.
You do. When he says he means me and him, we pretty much just wing fucking everything, and we're the ones who come up with the topics. So, but before we get into the nitty gritty of everything, because I have been so excited for this episode, I'm going to get the disclaimer out of the way with, and we're just going to crack on in. I ain't asking you guys any questions today because I just want to talk about this. So. Everything discussed in today's episode is our opinions and our opinions alone. If you'd like to discuss anything from today's episode, please come and join us in the Facebook group where we can have an open discussion. Oh, what we won't have is anyone coming for us and telling us our opinions are wrong. We can all agree to disagree in fandom. So let's keep it fun, keep it kind, and keep the toxic behaviour out of nerdism.
Very well done.
And I did that while Graeme was pulling faces because I could fucking see you.
No, I'm invisible.
You're the invisible
like
man.
Claude Rains, invisible like this. I'm just a floating shirt running
To be fair
around the
though,
room.
I'll be disappointed if he doesn't start pulling out bandages and wrapping himself up as we're going on.
That's what you
to
should
the
have
point
done.
where
Bandages
he's
and
just got the sunglasses out.
I've got some toilet roll. Could I get some toilet roll around there?
That'd be brilliant.
You know, like cost of living crisis mummy. Right?
So the question I would like to ask you guys before we start: when did you get introduced to the Universal horror or monsters, shall we say? Because I was probably at a very young age, but I didn't get introduced to the Universal monsters first. I was a big fan of the Hammer horror, like Christopher Lee and that type of like the British style, like of horror. That to me, that was what I was introduced first. And as I got a little bit older, like you hear the stories and you see like things, and that's I was probably about 12 or 13 when I actually did see them first, like say the Universal monsters.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you guys. Was around about the same age, younger, older?
About the same. I was about 15, because it was the first time I went to Universal Studios in Florida when I was 15, and I went to the monster movie makeup set.
Mm-hmm.
And they did, it's so brilliant. It did focus on the starting point of the Universal monsters was more to do with the how it's developed, like how it's grown. It just intrigued us. Makeup does massively intrigue us, and that's where my little love started for it. And it's growing so big.
What about you, Dan?
I saw a picture of Elsa Lanchester and I became immediately fascinated with how somebody wasn't mainstream beautiful, yet was the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen in and out of makeup. So I was like, I have to see what this is about. And then like I think I remember going to Blockbusters with my dad and going, Dad, please, I want to see these videos. And so he hired like a load of either Betamax, because I'm the old age pensioner in this group, or VHSs, and I sat and watched them, like, and I think he even got a late fine because I refused to give them back at one point. So I want to say it was about maybe 10, 11-ish. And I just remember just looking at her, and just it was like awe, you know, like when you look in someone, it was just like looking at her going, wow. And then you sort of discover everything else in a waterfall or cascading afterwards. It's just like, yeah. And to this day, she's still the most beautiful woman I think I've ever seen, because she's so unconventional. And
totally agree.
It is one of the more iconic looks as well, and I don't think, like, for like especially a female in horror, that it's just striking. Like you say Bride of Frankenstein, and it instantly hits, like, say that look and how that comes across, and I don't think it's ever been changed. Like because you've seen that many different versions of Frankenstein, you've seen that many versions of Dracula, but that vision has never been replicated, or not it's been replicated but never been altered or like moved away from like the first version. What about you, Jessica? What was your first foray?
I can't remember how young I was. I spent a lot of time with my granddad, so watching movies was all black and white films. He wasn't quite up on getting me like kids films to watch, so I got given all the old movies. And kids think like just being a grim little child, it was like, I want the one with the monsters. And then he started speaking them all out for me of like every single one. And I had like, he got me the novels of Dracula, Frankenstein and stuff. So I was kind of obsessed from so young of just like monsters. Now it's good. I mean, like I still love my horror now. There's something beautiful about the old styling. Like it just looks so much like there's more attention paid to atmosphere and lighting, everything.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No, I think as a production as well, that's the one thing I've noticed since revisiting the like everything has a purpose. Nothing's just put in for like visual or anything to say. Everything serves a purpose, and it's one of them. Normally, you can watch a film and you play on your phone, or you can talk away and you're not concentrating. You can still follow it. These you look away for like 30 seconds and you missed a major thing, or you've missed something that's happened, and I love that aspect to it, and it like the risks and the effects and things that they did in these movies paved the way for what we have now, like effects wise or special like effects wise. Like these were like the trailblazers in my eyes for a lot of different things. Like people was like say the bigger movies like Gone with the Wind or like It's a Wonderful Life and stuff like do get the credit like of being black and white movies, but these ones were more ambitious in a way of like to try and tell the impossible without things like they were doing like camera tricks and certain things, and it just blew me mind thinking this was in the 30s and 40s where computers and stuff wasn't around. They were doing this with trick lenses, cutting, splicing film. It just blows your mind what they could do and how they could do it.
Yeah.
Well, it's the sheer style of the films as well. Like Frankenstein especially, where it's just like, you know, like the sets are so crazy. Like when you watch old films like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and whatnot, and just being like, why is everything crooked? Like it's you know, we see it nowadays in things like Tim Burton and whatnot, where it's the idea of the whole set is mad. Like it looks like it was put in by a Sunderland builder or something. You just go like, what you know, it's like, how many angles do you want here exactly? But it's that amazing style. And then like you're saying, like The Invisible Man, like I was watching that just being like, how did they do this? Like, you know, like how did they, you know, and then you go, oh, they probably just sort of went frame by frame and cut everything out. Like, and that's like thinking about the pyramids being made, where they're like, oh, how did they do this? Oh, they just had 10,000 people and 100 years. And you're like, okay, that was an interesting time, but no, it is amazing though.
No, definitely. And what about you, Graeme? How did you get like started?
I've got to be honest, I got influenced by proxy with these, I think, because I didn't actually see most of these movies that we're talking about today until about 5 years ago. Like my mate Ian had the full box set of them on, is it either DVD or Blu-ray? And then I basically borrowed it and I binged watched all of them. But then it's the idea of we've experienced all of them through pop culture because of how iconic they are. So even stuff like when I was a kid watching stuff like Rocky Horror, and then watching stuff like Bride of Frankenstein, and watching things like, you know, Frankenstein effectively and Dracula, and just being like, oh, that shot is from that, or oh, that hand gesture is from that, or, you know. And it's like Lovecraft, where you just look into horror and you just go, oh, everything leads back to this, or everything leads back to, like, you know, Dracula or the creature from the Black Lagoon and whatnot. And so it's kind of crazy watching them and feeling like you knew them when you didn't. But obviously I knew the characters, like we're saying. We're talking about the Bride of Frankenstein is such an iconic thing. Dracula's, you know, like Bela Lugosi as a person is amazing. And, you know, so I kind of knew it, by association, I think. But then obviously as soon as I watched them, I was like, I love these. These are brilliant.
Yeah. No, definitely. And that shows you, like, because you worry with these type of movies, like when you talk to kids these days. I was at work the other week, and I was talking to some kids. Sam's going to freak out about this. I was talking to some young kids about Ghostbusters, and they were asking us, what's Ghostbusters? So, and like, these are like 18, 20-year-olds. It's like, if they're not watching movies like Ghostbusters and stuff like that, they've got zero chance of them going back and watching, like, say, these type of movies.
Paul, can you just cut to the footage of Frankenstein chucking the little girl in the lake? That's literally the reaction to that. Oh,
get in.
Yeet that kid in the bloody pond. Get it.
We've all felt like that, Frankie, don't worry.
Oh, that's so funny.
But that's the thing, though, because like I always worry. I know I probably worry too much about like pop culture and stuff moving on and leaving these type of classics behind. But as Graeme said, like the visual aspects will stay with us. And these are probably the first movies I watched. Like Jessica said, I went back and read the books. Like after watching Dracula as a kid, I went and got the read Bram Stoker's Dracula, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Jekyll and Hyde and stuff like that. It took us on to different literature as well. But like this week has been like blowing my mind when I've been watching these movies back, like the tricks and things. Like talk about like probably the two most famous ones, shall we say, is say in my opinion is probably Frankenstein and Dracula. Now, so I went back and watched the original Dracula with Bela Lugosi, and it was beautiful. Like the lighting, everything was just perfect. But one thing I did notice: no sound. There was no music like in the other ones.
Quiet.
It's crazy. I noticed that as well, and I was just
Me too.
"Oh, okay." Like that's.
It's down to the fact it's the first time they ever attempted sound in a film. Before this, they were all silent movies. So Phantom of the Opera was the one just before that spurred them to go and do Dracula.
Yeah.
So they took it from the stage play
Mm-hmm.
and translated it to film. So things like putting a soundtrack behind them, no one had thought of this yet because you wouldn't do that during a stage play.
Yeah.
It was all about the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
It's like weird, like Dracula, nothing really ever happens.
Yeah,
You don't,
it's
see
kind
that.
of.
You don't see any fangs, you don't
it's
see
kind of-
anything.
Sorry.
Sorry.
No,
It's me
Jessica
interrupting.
spits,
Sorry,
Jessica
carry on,
spits facts, by the way. This is what she
Delicious
does.
fact. I only spill bullshit.
But yeah, as you said,
no, it's so quiet though. It's so it's such an incredibly quiet film. I mean, I know necrophiliacs that would be put off by that amount of silence. It's like it's this horrible, just, and it works so well. Where you just go, sorry.
Well, to be fair though, it is on brand. We're talking about Dracula, so.
Talking. I think Dan's broken. You're good.
She's still here. She's still with us.
I forgot what I was going to say now. Just distracted by Dan.
Amazing.
But
God, that's amazing.
As Jessica said before, it's all about the presence, the stage presence. Because when I was watching Dracula back, I was like, nothing much is happening. They're just all staring at each other.
Yeah.
But it was the lighting. If you look at how they filmed, every time they went on to Bella as the Count, the lighting just stripped across his eyes.
Yeah.
It was constantly just that one bit, and it highlighted just under the brow line and his eyes, and that must have been a killer for him not to blink, because he was constantly eyes popping out of his head. And I noticed in that film, spoiler alert, he dies. Yeah.
What?
The bit at the end, it was so anticlimactic when you watched it, and he would just Van Helsing just went donk, and then you didn't see him. You didn't see him do it. You just saw him open the cabinet and hear ah.
Yeah, because John Harkness and Nina was going, get up the stairs, run up the stairs away. Everything's going to be fine. But yeah.
So
I think, to be fair, Bela Lugosi, he just hadn't turned up or something. Or they're we only had him for a couple of days.
Yeah. Couldn't be asked. Is that I'm done now?
Oh.
But the scary thing is, though, when I realised halfway through, just rewatching it for this, realising that Renfield doesn't blink is terrifying after he's gone mad. And you just go, well done, sir. That was a very long shot.
But I completely forgot about the Renfield aspect to it, to the start, because I was expecting when it loaded up, I was going, that's in the carriage. It's going to be John Harkness. It's going to be telling the story. And I was getting Renfield. I was like, shit, we're getting the Renfield story. I forgot about this. So I got us even more excited about it as well.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because it deviates from the book. Because obviously the book the Renfield thing happens in the book, but it's before the action, where basically Renfield gets sent over there to do Jonathan Harker's job, and then basically goes nuts and organizes some, and then he comes back to England and they put him in an asylum, and then they go, okay, we need to send Jonathan over to finalize the deal and get the contracts and stuff signed. And then this one just goes, let's skip that middle bit and just, I know, Jonathan Harker's in it, but he doesn't do anything. He's literally just standing there being like, I'm a man.
Yes.
With a very nice suit on.
Yeah, he's I am a suit. He's literally a shop dummy that they've somehow animated.
But he had that fact that he had to speak all like this at all times when he was clearly American, but he had that very voice that they use when they talk about things like that, don't they?
That was perfect.
Universal changed so many of these ones as well. Like, so when you go through the novels, Dracula's not portrayed as being this kind of suave, attractive man. He's portrayed like, he's described as hideous. He's grotesque. Like, the idea of that guy coming near is just like, ugh. This is done because of Bela Lugosi. Like, he brought this all of a sudden, Dracula's sexy.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone could see him as not. Same with Frankenstein. Mary Shelley's is not described in that way. It's all Universal's choices
Right.
that have now completely altered the characters, that anything other than them doesn't seem right. But the original depictions.
No, 100%. Like the aesthetics and this, like everything, as we said before, is done to the length that they went to for the, like, any little bits of detail that they put in, like going, like, I know we're jumping all over the place. I'll try and get a bit more structure in a second. Like, if you go to the Wolfman, the transition from man to wolf or wolf to man is breathtaking, especially when you think of how many different transformations we've had since then that have been so terrible. Like, the only one that jumps out of my mind to be up there is Werewolf in London. Like to be like the standard bearer. But watching that back was just amazing. But going back to the original Dracula, as Dan said, the ending, when it ends, you think it comes off the screen. You hear the music and it's like Universal. The end. It's like, what? Well, I want more. But I think that was a lot with the Universal ones. Like, the endings kind of just ended, and like it didn't really think. But when you look back through, and I didn't realize till we start looking up about the Universal monsters how many there actually were and how many sequels there were as well. Because I know if you buy the box set, like the collections, I've got the Alex Ross steel tin books that are absolutely beautiful. But there's like 5-6 DVD Blu-rays, and like you got the 8-disc one, but there's about 30 odd different films. If you look through the back catalogue, like if you include the Albert and Costello ones as well.
Yeah, the one that I got has, so you've got the movie, but then you've got all the extras that comes with the movie as well. So it's not necessarily the films, but it's like kind of if there's any like little mini documentaries on there, they're on that disc too. It was well worth the money. And it was well worth me not having to fucking look for these movies, because by God, it's hard. And they were getting on my nerves. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to buy it, because this is something that I will treasure and watch forever and ever. So it's not like it's just for this weekend. It was just perfect timing for this weekend.
Going back to what Jessica was saying, though, Universal knew what they were doing. And I'm going to butcher his surname, so apologies now. Carl, is it Lamel? I'm not really sure how you say.
Carl Lemire.
He I think
that
they
bloke.
yeah, that one, him.
Lemley. It's Carl Lemley. It's Lemley.
Just call him the L. Just call him Carl. Good old Carl.
It's Carl Lemley, the owner of Universal Studios.
That geezer, Carl. Yeah, him. Yeah, he knew what he was doing, because what he managed to do was make an anti-hero. And you'd never seen anti-heroes in the silent movies. It was all about the dastardly man tying the woman to the train tracks and her fainting and everything being like, oh,
which is so over the top when guns exist. You just go, really? This is like,
yeah. I'm just going to cut her into 1,000 pieces and run over by a train.
Yeah, it's like Dick Dastardly, actually, the epitome of that, where you just
exactly.
So you're telling me that you were miles in front in the race and decided to stop to set up a trap for the people behind you, and you sit there and be like,
yeah,
that's why he always lost. That's why he always lost.
Well, just finish the fucking race, Dick.
In that though, just
Motley's like, we can't even feed ourselves.
If we're talking about this dastardly, if you get a hat tomorrow, you can do the cosplay perfectly for that, Graeme.
Oh my God, I'd be amazing. Just spending the entire Nerdfest tying people up randomly, or yelling at pigeons.
Tying Goodwill up.
Sorry, totally derailed you, Dan.
Yeah. No, that's all right.
Sorry, Dan.
Literally, it's the idea of the anti-hero, because you find yourself with I know I do, because I'm a weirdo. I empathize every time with the monster, and I always think the monster is actually the hero, because the monster's the one that is always trying to do the right thing. These people come into their world, or they create them, and then they fuck up their world, or they'll fuck up how they're teaching them to be human, or whatever the end game is, and all they want is to either exist or not. In Frankenstein's case, not, because he makes it very clear in one of the films when he sits there. I can't remember if it's the bride or Frankenstein itself, where he sits there and he says, "I don't want to live, I want to die."
I think it was the bride of Frankenstein.
I think it's the bride, and it's definitely the bride.
You know, you can tell, but all the way through, I'm always led to the monster, and I'm always sitting there thinking to myself, yeah, that's the one I feel sorry for. That's the one I empathize with. I couldn't give a fuck about all those other people. They can get in the bin, you know. It's like
I watched Frankenstein a few years ago for the first time in like many years, and I find myself actually getting really angry at everyone else except him. Because to me, he's this new being, this new creature who has no idea of how to be a person. And the people who are there to teach him are bullying him and torturing him to the point where he just snaps. And I was like, you motherfuckers. I was so angry. And then with the little girl, I thought that was fucking ridiculous. Like, that water was not deep enough.
Threw in a puddle and she drowned.
But that water was not deep enough.
The fact that they didn't have armbands back in those days, or something,
floaties, no floaties for her.
If they'd just given her one of those foam paddles, we would have been like, "Oh, that's fine." You know?
I just thought it was aggressive giving the monster a flower when she knew how allergic he was to pollen. So I just thought that was very nasty of her. So she got
she deserved it. Then get in the river.
All of the monsters are kind of sympathetic, and it's odd because obviously in Frankenstein the novel, it is a sympathetic creature like Frankenstein's monster, whereas Dracula isn't. Dracula is viewed as an actual like total villain like monster in his story, and it's weird that the universal depiction does it that way, and then obviously all adaptations of Dracula since have seemed to go, oh, actually maybe he's not that bad, like Bram Stoker's Dracula bringing the love aspect into it that just wasn't there originally. But yeah, like all of them, like the Phantom of the Opera is a very, he is a tragic anti-hero. And even the Creature of the Black Lagoon, like basically these bastards come in, like pull his uncle's hand out of a mountain kind of thing. And then he's just like, oh, come on. Oh, you put bloody tents up here. Did you not read the sign? I don't know why he's from Yorkshire.
Creature is one of my favourite movies. And now all I'm going to be able to hear is a fucking Yorkshire accent.
Yeah. Hey up. Just come out lagoon.
Yeah. I tell thee, you should have left the hand alone. Looking up down that skinnet. Go on, off you go.
Hang on. I've just killed 2 people with bowl cuts. Bastards. But
you bastard.
Sorry, Yorkshire.
I am unapologetic.
It's so surreal because that's where I live at the moment, and that's every day.
How many Black Lagoon monsters have you encountered?
Well, it's questionable. Depends what time you get up in the morning. Like...
Depends where she goes in Yorkshire. But so out of the ones, like, I know it's impossible to watch them all. We've all tried this week to watch as many as we can, basically. What would you say is your ultimate favourite? Like the one that you've watched that's either surprised you or that you're still enjoying it? So Dan's showing it true colours first. So we'll let her go first there. So Dan.
It's always going to be the bride for me. It's that story that whilst she was called the Bride of Frankenstein, she was actually supposed to be the Frankenstein monster's bride. But and that's another thing that pisses me off, people that refer to Frankenstein's monster as Frankenstein. But I get why, because the marketing and people are just stupid. But it'll always be the bride, because it's like a love story, and then it's like, well, you don't like me, so we're both gonna die.
Yeah.
Yay! And everybody dies. The end.
The only thing that threw me completely after watching it, I forgot all about it till I saw it again, and I was like, what the fuck? When the scientists start bringing the little people in the jars?
Yes, the marsupials. Yeah.
What the fuck? Like, genuinely, what the fuck? Like, we watched Frankenstein later.
Yeah.
Yes, them both.
But we watched them like really late on in the day. Like Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein were pretty late on in the day when me and Ian binged them. And it got to this point of being like, are we hallucinating, or is this actually happening? Because I was just like, I don't know. I'm going to be really harsh. I do not like Bride of Frankenstein. I think it was my least favorite out of all the films. I like what it's doing, but when I watched it in the context of all of the films, you're a bit like, why is this a comedy? Like it is, and it's so weird that we watch Frankenstein and then that, and you're like, this is literally like a sort of, where they just go, oh, let's make a sort of comedy remake of Terminator, like a musical version of Terminator. But I enjoyed it, but it's a weird one for that very reason, where you're just going, the first one was very scientific and very realist and very sort of the horror is that this might happen. And then you just go, little people with no explanation as to how this happens. And then,
my backup is Creature. My backup will always be the Creature of the Black Lagoon, because it's that whole thing that when you analyze it and you realize how much swimming and free diving Rico Browning had to do. It was also directed by Todd Browning, who directed Freaks, which is an absolutely epic film. If anybody gets a chance to watch
it's unreal.
It's what Ryan Murphy based American Horror Story Freak Show off of. So it's one of those films when you think about what Rico Browning had to go through to be in that entire costume, swimming underwater for the length of time that he was down there for, and all the other guys that were doing their shots. They must have spent at least 60% of that underwater, that film. And it was crazy. Absolutely crazy.
The payoff is that beautiful sequence of where she's swimming on the top and he's swimming below her, and they mirror each other, and it is it's fucking spectacular. I absolutely love it.
So
I think
before Sammy
really
goes crazy with the Creature, but just coming back to the Bride of Frankenstein, there was elements I enjoyed. Like I say, I loved the relationship between Frankenstein's monster and the bride, when he was like holding hands and she was just screaming in his face, to the point that it was just like,
we've all had dates like that.
Yeah, exactly. We empathise.
But like I say, that element was just hilarious. But as Graeme said, the little people in the jar just threw me for a loop. I was like, what the fuck's going on here? But all the way throughout, the staple of this one, you always get the crazy woman that's like telling stories and going, "Oh, you gotta watch out! There's something coming."
I don't know how I feel about her. We were literally like, does she have an off button? Because she's in The Invisible Man as well, and you just go like,
she fucking is, isn't she?
Do you know what though? She reminded me of a Carry On film. You took her out of a 1960s Carry On film and you put her in a 1930s movie, 1934. She'd hold up in both of them. Oh, blimey! Oh, blimey!
It's that scream in The Invisible Man when she's not really seen anything, and that was it. Her husband's just being chucked down the stairs, and she's hysterically screaming for no reason whatsoever. Honestly, I was wetting myself. I laughed a lot through that movie.
We were watching it.
Underlying context, Dr. Pretorius, so the guy with the jars, how creepily perverted he is about the whole thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it comes up, he's a really kind of ambiguous character of sexuality based. His kind of perversion for Henry is a bit off at certain points. Him trying to create a woman, and it's like, he has this thing where he toys between it's the bride, like the perfect female figure, but also like a daughter that you can coach as they get older.
Yeah.
And that's the bit I like about it most, is like this weird, creepy, obscure man who just appears of just kind of like, hello. What if
He was an archetypal evil scientist type thing, like showing up and just saying, I'm just going to play with things, almost to the point like we got Reanimator from these type of aspects to it as well.
God, that movie. Wow.
But
and his campers tits.
Yes.
We just need to appreciate
it. Is. He is the epitome of camp at that time, and it's almost kind of like I would love to have known at its exact year when that came out what the reaction was to such a camp villain.
And
a time like that was, did it cause controversy? Did people just kind of go, I don't know,
They probably just thought it was very
about
pretty.
him or not.
Well, you wonder, does this tie into like like obviously how films portrayed gay people in the past, where they went, oh, he's camp, therefore he needs to be a villain, and that's they basically went, all gay people are evil, therefore they're like this. So you wonder if maybe his campness was added to him as a villain there, whereas we're kind of seeing him as this quirky weirdo character, whereas they must have gone, oh, he's a bad guy, oh, because he's really camp and stuff. And you wonder if that played into it, but but he's a nutter. Just putting it there, but the whole thing is campus hits. Like,
No, definitely, and it's weird because I know we've alluded to it before, but how like these films still resonate with like movies like that's going up, like goes through. After watching Bride of Frankenstein, all of a sudden I had to watch Weird Science. Just that popped into my head straight away, so I had to go from Bride of Frankenstein just because she's
another incredibly gay movie. If we're going to be honest about this, wow,
Gary,
the amount of lingering shots on a teenager's ass, and you're like, okay, this is.
Well, to be fair, it was John Hughes, so like I say, I'll take that. But
I was just combing my hair.
Bill Paxton's character still. Is it Bill Paxton? It was Bill Paxton, isn't it? Or Bill. That's
Paxton.
Yeah. His character is a chid. He's like Gary Wyatt's brother is just hilarious. Like say, why do you like say? I'm not even gonna try and do the one-liners now because they just won't work. But that again, that's a different podcast for a different day if I can go into that. But yeah. What about you, Jessica? Are you another fan of The Bride with you wearing the t-shirt as well there?
No, well, yeah, it is. It's up there for me, and some of like my favorites. There's one I only found it recently. It's classed as basically the lost Universal film. So it took them ages to find it again and re-release it. And it's one called The Old Dark House.
I have heard of this.
Features the Doctor from The Bride. Boris Karloff's in there.
Yes.
There's a plethora of all the Universal actors.
Is Lugosi in it?
Lugosi's
Karloff.
Karloff.
Yeah.
Is that the film where the people get stranded in a storm in this house, and then on the third floor there's a weird? Yes. I literally randomly watched that like 2 months ago because I got that like old, the old app where basically it's movies that have run out of copyright, and it just came up there, and I was like, oh, let's watch that. I thought that was brilliant, and it was weird just being like, why are all of these famous people in this one random film? That was a great film.
It's done amazingly because, again, it's like a stage play because it's all set in one room. Everyone always exits out the same door and comes back in. No matter where they're going in the house, it's one door they use to come in and out. It's comedic in its way because there's some amazing lines. There's the little wizened old lady, and she just keeps kicking off the whole time. It's like, there's no beds. Like, they can stay, but there's no beds.
And the tourists, like, isn't there? It's not, the large guy who's just like, oh, what? Well, actually, he is Yorkshire, isn't he?
He is. He's so Yorkshire.
He's like, hey, I found this merman outside. Could come in.
It is.
No beds.
It's got this incredible social context in it because you've got two kind of old money characters. You've got an ex-war veteran. You've got, I think, really classed as a chorus girl. And then you've got the big Yorkshireman who is new money. He's just built his business. And this film sets precedence for all movies ever since that have come out like this.
Right.
Where you stick a bunch of characters that would never ever interact before, stick them in a room in a scenario where they can't get out for an entire night. And now you're going to work out who are these people you're sat with.
So just an old version of Clue.
Yeah, well, I think every movie like that has come from this context because the very first one done in that sense. There is no monster in the film. There kind of isn't a film. There's a crazy.
There is a psycho on the third floor, admittedly, who tries to burn the house down, but he had his reasons.
Which is incredible when it does appear because it's so maniacal. I laugh every time because it's like a wild toddler just gets released and he just starts doing mad stuff.
Release the chimpanzees.
Release the goodwill.
Oh wow!
But no, the social construct, like almost create an entire genre out of one movie for a movie that barely anyone's ever heard of. Realizing it all comes from just this one idea.
No,
one night
definitely.
and a bunch of people.
How do you feel regarding the other Universal films? Because I found bizarrely that I'm very much someone who loves like having subtext and things inside movies. And obviously like Bride of Frankenstein does have a lot of sort of commentary in that sense. But then the others, I don't think they do. Like they seem to be straight up kind of, this is a film about a monster. Like, and obviously you could read, you could read into a creature with like going, hey, it's about us, entering into other people's environments and like the damage that humanity does to nature. But at the same time, I'm kind of like, or it's about a monster that they find, it's
the Wolfman. Don't look at girls through a telescope. You turn into a wolf.
Don't be a fucking incel pervert. That's the plot of the Wolfman.
Yes.
I was literally watching that being like, oh, all of this is like, no, this is why they haven't remade this one directly.
In saying that, though, I don't know if that necessarily applies with The Hunchback, because I watched the original 1923 one, the silent film, and someone had remastered, they'd remastered it, and they'd created an entire new score for the whole film. So you were watching it with a soundtrack of like a completely written symphonic score, and it was one of the most beautiful things I sat back and watched. And I know in 1923 things were very, very different with visually different disabilities, things like that, but it sort of tackled that key element of social rejects and disability, and how he was banished because he was too ugly to look at, and how it just took one kind woman that was I hate using the phrase, it's their phrase, not mine, the gypsies, and they were then being persecuted as well, and it just took the kindness of one woman to make him realize that he was worth more. And I think that is, you see that theme run through quite a lot of films these days. Usually they make the Hunchback over by now, and he turns into a 6'4" hunking, ripped bloke, after his makeover. But,
we just need to take all this makeup off. Oh.
But you do see that same theme though has carried on over 100 years.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to, when you break it down and you analyze it and you see how amazing that is, that something can run for as long as 100 years and still be woven in and out of movies.
But I think that's just down to good storytelling as well. Like good stories or good ways of telling the stories are timeless, and like it's the same with horror. Like they always say that horror movies and comedy do share same beats. It's all about timing and like thing. But a lot of the horror movies from today could take a lesson from going back to the days, and like things like patience, don't rush things, don't throw too many different elements in, just keep it simple, and they can be like a lot more terrifying. But before I start going on the whole diarrhea of saying like about new horror movies needing to go back to the drawing board. But what about you, Sammy? Like I'll let you go with the one that you want to talk about.
It is the. Do you know what? I'm going to shock you, because yes, Creature, 100%, and I hope we have a very in-depth conversation about Creature, because it's not just my favorite Universal movie, it's one of my favorite movies of all time. But what it really shocked us watching these back is how fucking good the Wolfman is. Like, I think I bagged on you about it through message, just like, gotta fucking watch it. He's like, I already have. I couldn't get over how fucking brilliant it was. Lon Chaney Jr. was just, oh my god, that man was absolutely breathtaking. I could hang on every word he said. Was it Claude Rains who played his father? Like, oh my god, that man's voice, like even in The Invisible Man, like that voice is just fantastic. And I love the fact that them two are very close in age, and yet are playing father and son. I found that quite funny.
It is that weird thing. I mean, if they remade The Invisible Man with Joe Pasquale, it would be a totally different movie, I think
it would still work though.
It would be hilarious.
It would still work.
No, I don't want to wake up and hear his voice and then not see him anywhere. I'll be hallucinating. Oh, I know a song that'll get on your nerves.
Oh God, no! And then just a white sheet just dancing everywhere.
Dan went back to a red coat stage now. Hopefully.
Oh yeah, she's there. But yeah,
PTSD.
The Wolfman really, really surprises. But Anthony came in halfway through the film and went, right, answer me this. Why is he the Wolfman and not a werewolf? And I was like, I don't know. Have I missed something? I was like, have I missed something? Because he goes, yeah, he's not a werewolf, he's a wolf man.
Did he use the word werewolf during the film? They did.
Which was again what threw us because, and also Bella, who's in the movie as well, or Bela, sorry, I said I would pronounce his name right. It's Bela Lugosi. He was on 4 legs, whereas Lon Chaney Jr. was on 2 legs and hind legs as well. He walked on his tippy toes.
But wasn't that just because
with his little furry boots?
I know we keep saying movie magic and shit, but he was a werewolf a lot longer than Cheney was. Like, say, he might have been in the early stage of the
Yeah, that's what I said. I was like, maybe it's a transformation thing. Maybe the more he's into it, and the more he, because he's not fully there yet. He's not fully looking like what Bela looked like as a way. And honestly, we went on this. We sat there. I paused the movie, and we just sat there and went on this absolute deep dive about werewolves and wolfmans, and it was, but it was brilliant. I love the conversation we got out of it.
Jessica knows.
Jessica's got facts.
Yeah, no. Before Jessica comes with the actual truth, I felt like it was probably like I'm just reel off some bollocks. I thought it was probably marketing. I probably thought that they were like, oh, we'll call the movie The Werewolf. And then everyone's just going to be like, what the fuck's a werewolf? Whereas if they go the wolf man, they're going to be like, oh, it's a man who's a wolf. Like, I don't know. I think it was, a marketing roundtable.
Oh, Jessica's not.
People are stupid.
Jessica's revving up. Like, come on.
Okay. I'll step back. I'll let Jessica go.
Come on, spit them backs.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think at the time, because all the titles were very direct, it was had Dracula, Frankenstein, The Invisible Man. I think they had to have a character title. But I think there's context in the movie as well, because it's his humanity, that he's the wolf man, that he's still hanging on desperately, that he is still human. There's a bit of that kind of, he has to better his ways because he kind of screwed up to get himself into that problem. And I think it does come across that way, where he's not a werewolf. It is that whole dying to hold on to still being a man.
She's getting really deep here. Wow.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
No, don't apologize. I absolutely love it.
It was easy to pinpoint that character, again, merchandising as well, to be able to sell. This is the wolf man. Other people are doing werewolves, but this is the wolf man.
It was like say it is like say I did enjoy this one. It was one of the better acted movies. I'll be honest, like the acting in it was thing, but it just shows you the sign of the times that we are in. That like stalking and watching girls through windows was seen as charming back then, but now it's kind of like it's a little bit creepy. But
we stay away from it.
A little bit.
Just a little bit. We stay away from
But the only thing that did upset us a little bit when I watched it, because as you said, when the first werewolf come into it, I'll not try and pronounce his name because I'll get told off by Sam.
No, it's just it's only because I've watched a shitload of documentaries, and his son was like, it's Bela, not Bella, it's Bela.
Sorry, but because that was looked like an actual dog, and it looked like the dog was actually getting hit, so it actually upset us a little bit.
I know.
I was like, I don't know if I can keep watching this, because he was like slapping the dog getting more aggressive.
That cane, I kind of winced away when I watched it, but
I have that.
You've got the cane.
Oh, wow.
My ring light is actually on the cane as I speak now.
Oh no!
Hang on a second.
Don't break
That's for killing werewolves, Dan.
Wow.
That is amazing.
Yeah, because
that is phenomenal.
It's I've told you two before, my entire upstairs hallway, I've got Dracula and I've got the creature over the stairs. I've got literally absolutely everything.
So how many werewolves have you
Hotel
killed
all the
with that
boys.
cane?
Yeah.
As to date, none.
Right.
But, you never know.
Well, you are coming in the
never know.
northeast soon,
Those are
so
rookie
there'll
numbers.
be a few
You're gonna
dodgy
wanna
people
pump
up there
them
that
up.
you can whack about with it, I'm sure.
Newcastle Comic Con, here I come.
Yay! Can't wait. Don't bring your cane. I will be there. So...
And Sam is a bit dodgy. She will try and steal it.
I'd rather steal Dan. So
now that doesn't sound creepy at all.
Nope. I'm just being honest.
Bye.
You wouldn't leave.
So you said the werewolf. So the werewolf's taken over
yeah.
from Creature, or
No. Creature's still huge love and respect for that movie. Like it's one of my favorite films of all time. I did go on a bit of a deep dive with The Wolfman, because I know that Bud Westmore was the makeup artist for Creature. Well, makeup artist. We'll put that in brackets. But I knew that Bud Westmore's name was associated. And I was like, but I know Jack Pierce is incredibly famous for Dracula. He created the look that we know of Dracula today. Frankenstein, The Bride, The Wolfman. And I was like, how the fuck do we get from Jack Pierce to Bud Westmore? So I just went on this huge deep dive of the fact that Jack Pierce, he was a bit of a monster when it came down to his prosthetics and how he handled the people on set. Apparently he was not a very nice man at all.
To be fair though, at the time, was anyone a nice man in the 30s?
The only person he was nice to was Boris Karloff, because he was fucking terrified of him.
Yeah.
But Lon Chaney Jr. and him had massive arguments. One being the makeup that he used for Wolfman, he just fucking hot glued fur to his face. like he just literally that's how you got the effect of the Wolfman, was just through him hot gluing shit to him. So it got to the point where he actually got sacked in the end, and then Bud Westmore becomes the makeup artist, and that's where you get the story of Bud Westmore fucking lying about the makeup with Creature from the Black Lagoon. And
that family's lived off of that name, because then Michael Westmore went on to do Star Trek.
Well,
and then Mackenzie Westmore she hosted Face Off, and they've even got, when I've been to Universal on the tours, they've got the Bud Westmore stage now.
Right.
So they've got he's not for all the Westmores live off that name. It's his brother who's the bigger star. He was part of he was part of the bigger movies. Bud was a bit of a joke. Didn't fucking like him. The family didn't quite like him. It's the brother that is then associated with Michael and Mackenzie. But Bud he's a dick. Like, if I've got the book, The Lady from the Black Lagoon, written by Mallory O'Hara, and it talks the story of Millicent Patrick, the lady who did actually create the concept art and the initial sculpture for Creature. And it's a fantastic book of discovery on her part to about Millicent, but also finding out more about herself as well. It's such a fantastic book. Michaela described it perfectly today. You're reading this book thinking that Mallory's sitting in front of you having a conversation. That's how how much it brings her in. You think you just talk, she's just talking to you. Like a mate. It's such a good book, and it's so fascinating to go down. But Jack Pierce, there's hundreds of documentaries on him, but his makeup is the starting point of why you have the likes of Rick Baker and Tom Savini, is because of Jack Pierce. It'll never be Bud Westmore. That's for fucking sure. That's my TED talk for the day.
Dark undertone about Universal. There's a lot of horror stories.
Yeah.
For most of people who worked in Universal, there was multiple really quite abusive directors.
Oh, they were vicious.
James Whale.
Oh, why? Michaela made sure I wanted to mention James Whale as well, because she's watched Love and Monsters recently.
It's really, really quite sad. So he took a serious dislike into Boris Karloff because he became more famous.
Yeah. The
film became Boris Karloff's Frankenstein. And I think it's around the time they were doing the third movie.
Yeah.
Boris Karloff had like majorly injured his back anyway. It was known to have like, a huge back issue. And there is a scene where he has to keep picking a guy and throwing. He just kept doing it. He was like, do it again. He's like, I can't, it hurts. He's like, do it again. Do it again. And they checked the reels. The first one was totally fine. He was doing it in punishment of him.
Wow.
Kind of like, I'm going to make you hurt.
Yeah.
Because you took my fame.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought Jessica was going into a Nine Inch Nails song there, so sorry.
Oh god, yeah. If you watch
I heard Boris Karloff today.
That's so good. If you watch Love and Monsters, it's the story of James Whale. It's from the point of he's a sick man, isn't he? Is it like as in poorly? He's physically poorly, and it's his relationship with a gardener who actually is Brendan Fraser.
That's Gods and Monsters, isn't it?
Gods and Monsters, yes.
Yeah,
Did I say Monsters
that's
and
it.
Gods? Something like that.
You
but
said
yeah.
Love and Monsters, and I was just like, that's a porno. That's totally different.
So sorry, but yeah, Gods and Monsters. It's got Sareen McKellen as James Whale. I've watched the first half of it and only stopped because I went to pick Anthem and I totally forgot I was watching it. Like other things came up and Michaela's watched it all the way through and she said it's fantastic, like a really fantastic movie. She's Brendan Fraser is phenomenal in it. Like up against Ian McKellen.
Yeah.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
To be fair though, Dan, who haven't you met at this point?
You guys.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to change.
And now you regret
Brendan
every
Fraser.
moment.
No, Brendan Fraser is one of the most gentlemanly gentlemen, and I met him when he was before pre-Oscar, when he was in his dip, and genuinely one of the most nicest men you'll ever meet. Just thought I'd add that because I don't get to show off about things like that often.
We love to hear your stories though. Like when I think the last episode he was like, have you seen this person? Yes. Have you met this person? Yes. It was like just jealousy just flowing through me. It's like the dark side coming out there. But yes,
Brendan Fraser is like absolutely lovely kind of thing, and so beautiful. Like especially in Gods and Monsters, it's this idea of going, he is a beautiful man, like, and he still is now. You know, it's this. You see him and he's put on a bit of weight, but you're like, but you're still gorgeous. Like you're still like, but like James Whale is a very troubled character because obviously very closeted, gay. Well, I think it was like an open secret in the industry, but then the fact of like, I mean, in the end, he committed suicide, didn't he? Like he was. He was a very troubled person but a bastard. So is that like kind of idea of going like, oh, I know you had reasons for being a bastard to everyone. However, you were
a dick.
Jack Pierce was probably he was an arsehole to everyone but Boris Karloff, and it was because he was fucking terrified of him. He was scared of that man. He said that
in the lake.
And he said when it came to his prosthetics, he thought of him and not anything else. Like he had to be comfortable in it because he was going to be working in it. He had a totally different outlook when it came to Lon Chaney Jr. I don't know why he wanted to punish that man, but he did. He really didn't like him.
There's similar controversy with the Mummy. So because I cannot remember names when it comes to the Mummy. But the guy who'd done the Mummy had a serious issue with the main female actress.
Really?
In their like wordings about her, for her opinion, she was like she was the scapegoat if this film didn't work.
Right.
He kept telling her, "Oh, she's hysterical. She's a nightmare." And it wasn't. And she said she knew it was going to happen. She'd heard everyone basically talking on the grapevine, saying, "If this movie goes down, you're going to take the brunt."
Right.
She invited him over for dinner, and he asked her directly at the table. He's like, "You're aware you're going to have to do a topless scene, by the way." Expecting her to kind of recoil and kind of go, "Oh no, yeah, okay." Knowing that the censors wouldn't have allowed it anyway, she was like, "I know what you're doing." In the end, she's only credited as, I think she is the top of the secondary actors, even though she is the lead female of the film.
Wow.
He just put her through the ringer. He wanted basically anything that went wrong. It's not me, it's her.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is crazy considering what I was going to say is she is one of my favorite things out of all the movies. Like I absolutely adored her. Like she was, you couldn't take your eyes off her. Like every scene she was in, she steals the show. So it's kind of nuts that they were like, "Oh, she's rubbish," and you're like, "Are you watching the same film as you know?"
She's a woman, don't you know?
Weirdly huge occult fan as well. So she's in this movie about reincarnation, had a genuine belief herself in it.
Right.
That all follow things that she was hugely passionate about. But it's always strange to read some of the stuff about just all these dark undertones.
Yeah, massively.
In this big studio pushing out so many. I mean, we hear it now about things like Disney and Star Wars and it's wild even back then this stuff was still happening.
Yeah.
You still had all these actors under immense pressure of like, we have to be making movies. If you're comfortable, if you're happy.
Yeah. If you go back over silent movie stars and you sit and up until the point where they were getting the talkies, they were knocking out nearly 200 to 400 movies in their career. Like that's a lot of fucking movies.
Isn't it crazy though? Like I remember because obviously we were talking about her earlier, the screaming woman from The Invisible Man and Bride of Frankenstein, who I know you obviously like her, but I like literally Ian was drawing in the background like while I was watching these and he was like absently watching, and then in the middle of The Invisible Man after that particular scene he's like, "Oh fuck, that fucking pterodactyl's not in this one, are they?" And I was just like, "Yep, it's her again," you know.
She's back.
And it was just like your whole purpose seems to overact. And it's like, you can tell a gay man made this film because she is the ultimate fag hag. She is the ultimate, like, you know, pantomime dame character. And you're just going like, oh, God, you know.
Oh, I love it. Did anyone else?
But no, really? We looked, sorry, the way this ties in is we looked her up on IMDb.
All right.
And we were like, oh, God, she's been in like 400 films. And they were like months apart. And you were just like, wow, like nowadays it's like, oh, you've been in 8 films, that's your career made. Whereas as a character actress, you were in like, oh, you signed up to Universal, cool, we'll put you in every single film every single week. It's crazy.
It's crazy the amount of work that they had to do. All I was going to say is, does anyone when they're watching The Invisible Man not wet themselves laughing at that police officer? And he walks through the door and just goes, "Hello, hello." Well, what is going on here? Could not stop laughing at that policeman, asking, where the fuck are you coming from in the world?
Yeah, especially, isn't it meant to be set in like Germany or something? I don't know.
And then they had all these English accents.
I was like going back into hello, good morning.
It was like, "Hello, what's going on in here?"
I just love that everyone just ignores him for the entire film. Like he's literally he calls his boss and he's like, "We've got a situation." He's like, "No, you don't." He's like, "Oh, okay." Right.
But that was the theme though through the movies. Like I noticed as well, like the police force or like the detective inspectors were completely useless. Like the police officer in The Wolfman was just saying, "Oh, it's down to hypnosis or people like mental health, people thinking that the wolves will become wolves and stuff like that." I was like, huh? You're a police officer. You're supposed to be detecting this. There's tracks leading from the scene to the crime to the window. Or just let him sleep. I'll not question him now. It's like...
It's an odd one, though, because, like, is this one of these things where we know the secret because we're the viewer and we've seen everything and we draw that? Whereas for them, they'd be like, you don't really jump from crime to Wolfman. You know, it's like, I don't make that logical jump that much when I'm looking at stuff. But
it's the fact that they were actually listening to his doctor. His doctor's like, "You're not questioning my patient. I am not questioning your patient." Like he was actually listening to. It's like, who the fuck are you to tell a policeman that he can't question a person? It was ridiculous. Very good though. Yes. It's still ridiculous.
So, like, say, Graeme, what was your like standout favorite? Would you say?
It's really difficult. I'm going to agree with Sammy, to be fair. I think it, like, you know, obviously I've bashed like Bride of Frankenstein a bit, which I loved The Mummy. I loved everything about The Mummy, especially her. Like she, like that is that thing where, you know, you just go, you are a beautiful woman. Like, you know, in terms of that, like the star presence, it was a fantastic. I really like that one. I really liked Creature of the Black Lagoon. That's the one that's always stuck with me, and the creature that sticks out in my head most, probably even more than Frankenstein, which is weird.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's great to see, like, you know, it's great to see like a pre-Tarantino foot fetish movie as well. There's like the amount of like times the creature's just like, oh, gotta get your toes.
Get your toes. Yeah. in that scene when he's on the boat and they've got him held captive and you can see his eyes just above, like he's not quite in the water eye-wise. That is one of the most terrifying scenes I have ever seen in a movie.
To be fair though, that cage was shit. They've got this monster in this cage that he could literally just pull himself. It's like, he's a water monster, he can't do a pull-up.
Yeah, it was ridiculous, the cage, but the actual just the calmness of the whole boat itself and just him with his eyes just above the water. I was like, fuck that, not a chance.
It's a weird setup as well, considering like all the stereotypes that we've seen. Creature of the Black Lagoon has like the main cast and they're joined by like, I don't know, like the male equivalent of the cheeky girls who get killed pretty quickly.
They've got some tiny shorts, don't they?
and then what is it? Mexican Colonel Sanders, and it's a really weird kind of team that they have there. But no, Creature of the Black Lagoon isn't my favorite. When I was watching them back, I'd say it was probably Wolfman. Like Wolfman, so even though I dislike the main character, I think he's acted wonderfully. But the writing is one of these things where it irks me a little bit because it's so chauvinistic and it's so of the time. But wow, what a beautiful film. Like the flow of it, the atmosphere, it's so gothic, it's so it's beautiful. Like all of the little like sort of smoky sort of like forest scenes and stuff like that. Although like he's a telescope pervert where he's basically spying in, would that ever work? Like as a room, if someone said, "Oh yeah, I've been staring through your bedroom window," you'd be like, "Oh, how charming!" He's interested.
And to be fair, she was engaged as well, so that was a bit ahead of its time.
He was pushing his luck and all.
It really is. Like he just turns up and he's just like, she's like, "Oh, I'm engaged." No, you're not. No, he doesn't. Come out with me anyway. And then what's the scene where he's like, "Oh well, let's go for a date. I'll pick you up at 8 p.m." And she's like, "No," and he's like, "Well, I'll be here at 8 p.m." And she's like, "That's not how this works." And then she leaves. It's the most incel thing in the entire world, where basically she leaves work and he's there and she's like, "Oh, that's nice that you're here." And he's like, "Come on, time for our date." And then her friend turns up and he's annoyed and you're like, I no, but either way, it did annoy me, but like I thought it was really brilliant, like the way that it sort of had reveals and stuff. So obviously he gets the cane with the silver handle, he kills the wolf, and then later it's revealed, oh, silver kills wolves. And also we have this obsession in popular culture of like silver bullets killing werewolves, where it's not, it's a cane. That
blew my mind, that when I was like, oh my god, it's the cane.
I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's just I absolutely loved it because he had all the crazy stuff, like, although some of it was a bit weird because doesn't he get trapped in a bear trap and then just limp away and you're like,
no, he kind of he squirms around a lot. He doesn't like kind of. We got to think that he's obviously in a very like manic state to start with, but at the end of the day, he's still got human shape, so he kind of can like just go, huh? Like open it up like the woman actually does in the end for him. But obviously no, he writhes around a lot on the floor and it doesn't actually look like his foot's trapped in it either. If you look at it closely, it doesn't really look like it's there.
I mean, I genuinely loved it. Like, Bela Lugosi, like absolutely, he's literally in for 5 minutes and you're just like, you are amazing and iconic. And I love his mum, like the gypsy fortune teller, and she was wonderful. And the problem is, I've been coloured by the other films because as soon as I saw her, I was like, "Oh no, you're going to be the crazy bitch of this film, aren't you?" You're going to be the screaming woman.
Was she? She was like so calm, like almost too calm for someone who just lost their son. She was all right with it.
Yeah. Although this does start the horrible trend of people being given pendants to protect themselves and then just being like, "Don't
giving them away."
Goodbye. We've got it in bloody The Mummy where it's like, "Hey, this will protect you." No, whatever.
I'll just give that to somebody else. But I was 4 minutes that.
Like going back to the Wolfman as well, like the filming of it as well. It wasn't just the practical effects, and I know we do give a lot of shit to like the CGI aspect now, but CGI of the day, like the thing, the pentagram being on seen on the hand and suddenly disappearing, like that type of effects, like in them days, like as Graeme said before, there'd be someone cutting out the film, like the reels and stuff, and adding stuff to it, or even drawing it on and type thing.
A lot of it was very similar to what they did with Star Wars. They painted a lot of the backgrounds. So if you watch Dracula, you'll see it in Dracula. That was the first time. I mean, I noticed it in The Hunchback a bit, but it was more. It seemed more prevalent in the shots where Renfield's traveling in the coach.
Yeah.
You see all the mountains beautifully drawn in the background, but with today's eyes, you know that they're drawings. You know they're paintings. They do something very similar. I can't remember which one it was I watched. It is a recurring theme, because I know, slightly deviating a little bit, but when Hitchcock first started doing when he did The Birds, there was a lot of layering when he is doing it there. So he's borrowed techniques from that, and then Star Wars in the 70s is still borrowing techniques from the 30s.
It's crazy,
so
isn't
it is one of those things that the art guys don't get enough love for, because you don't question it. You just go, oh, that's what that is. And they've done their job. They've done their job, you know. But yeah, I do think there's a huge, they're very under praised, should we say, because the work they do makes you think that that's supposed to be there, and it is there, and it's a drawing. So
but that goes back
all of
to
these films were probably filmed like obviously at Elstree or whatever, where they're just these like a sound stage, and then you're like, oh, I really thought some of this was done on location. It's like, no, we just made this massive cave, and you're like, oh, you mad bastards, you know.
But that's what, like, the point I was making before about like the young kids not even seeing Ghostbusters. So trying to get them to see a black and white movie and appreciate like the work that goes in to like these movies, and like if you look at it now, if you saw like put it up to like, a modern day film, you think, oh, it's cheesy as fuck. But if you put it back to like basically when it was filmed, imagine going to the cinema and seeing these movies for the first time. Like it'll be going back to like a previous episode that Dan was on. We were talking about movie deaths, and I talked about The Wizard of Oz. Seeing The Wizard of Oz for the first time blew my tiny little mind as a kid. So going to the cinema, seeing these, like I said, the creature of the Black Lagoon doing the water scene would have just been hypnotizing to see. Massive. Or to see a man like changing into a werewolf and going, fuck, I'm not going out in a like it's the Jaws effect. I'm not going in the sun. I'm not going in the sea. I'm not going out on a full moon. You can understand why people were crazy back in the days then. So.
Yeah, the transformation.
The translation to a younger audience now, obviously, it's been happening for a while. There's always been times where they've tried to come back to the Universals. For some reason, it always goes wrong. They never get past more than one or two films before they sort of collapse back out of it. So my son, he's 10. Obviously knows that we've got every depiction of stuff around the house. Weirdly, Van Helsing, terrible movie. Terrible.
I love how we're all in agreement. We're all saying that, yep.
Fun movie, though.
I like Hugh Jackman.
Really well to get across to a 10-year-old Universal monsters, because they're all in there. Not the best versions, but to a 10-year-old, this all of a sudden looks really cool. This Frankenstein bracket. I know these, like, he'll sit and talk to me and I'll go like, I know who they are. Because he watches this film on repeat as well. I catch him all the time to get back on. It's really stuck for him. I've shown him the old Universals, and he can, as a 10-year-old could, he gets it. Yeah. Probably not the appreciation he will have when he's older for it. Yeah. But this redos of them, written by Brendan Fraser. The Mummy is probably one of the most iconic films of its time. People literally celebrate this movie. It's like the Holy Grail.
It is the sexiest movie ever made.
Oh, that's true.
It is genuinely probably one of the only remakes that's worked. Like the Tom Cruise piece of dog shit was a piece of dog shit, and never should have been made just because it had Tom Cruise in it, you know.
But it's that bizarre thing where they're just like, it's the fact of like, it didn't have any spirit, it didn't have any comedy, it just didn't work. Whereas the Brendan Fraser one, it's like going, well, this is a reimagining in the style of the same way that like John Carpenter's The Thing is totally different to the Thing from the Other World, but in in the context of the 80s, it worked like amazingly.
Yeah.
I mean, Bram Stoker's Dracula worked, but that was not the Universal Dracula.
No, that was like a romantic.
It was the book adaptation, even though it was loosely based on the book. You know, so really, I think there isn't much success in reboots, because even the Wolfman with Anthony Hopkins and Benicio del Toro.
Yeah.
Oh, is it not worth watching? I was actually going to watch that.
No,
watch it.
Said it was
watch
balls.
it.
Yeah.
Watch it. But like, in my opinion, the one we've been talking about, compared to that is, it's new eyes on an old film, basing it in an oldie time frame. It doesn't work. They don't have that.
Yeah.
That thing that the Universal monsters have. Yeah, I don't know what it is. I'm biased though. So.
No, I find it's going back to the Tom Cruise one, because I did want to actually touch on that, because I got very excited when they announced like the Dark Universal universe that they were going, like the plan and like everything was going to be in the connection, because it was after the Avengers came out, so they were like, Universal, this was going to be their like tentpole that they were going to think, but it was just a choice to start with the Mummy and start with like Tom Cruise as the protagonist. It was just like a weird type of element. If you watch it back, they made a lot of changes, and like I say again, trying to be progressive and entertaining, but this overall story didn't work. But I think one thing it did lack was it wasn't fun. It was too serious. Where if they started with something like The Invisible Man, or started something like at one way you can get a little, not to say a little bit of humor, a little bit of empathy towards, where that one it was kind of like, it's not a monster movie, it's a Tom Cruise movie, so that kind of took the element away. Where with like, I think they had Angelina Jolie cast as the bride, apparently. Johnny Depp was going to be in it as the Invisible Man. Russell Crowe was Dr. Jekyll and Hyde, I think.
Yeah, that one I would be intrigued by that one, to be fair, because he did start to pull that off in there, didn't he? It was alluded to, or it was said in the I can't say it, but you know, Smology's Jesus himself, that movie. It was alluded to that he was in that, but I would be intrigued by that, because the Jekyll and Hyde element, League of Gentlemen managed to do something, and the CGI was absolute, I'm going to say it again, dog shit, but it was of its time, you know. And poor Jason, oh Jason.
I think when you get something like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, because again, this is another one that my little one can understand these characters through like a kind of more action based.
Yeah.
The visuals for Hyde, I don't hate, because I do like the transition factor as it literally snaps him through, and like the pain factor of
the
seeing
sound, I think, for me as well.
He does really well at playing the character, and the Invisible Man, I absolutely love in that. I think there's some hell of a jokes about him. Sean Connery realizing he's in the room and just supposed to have him by the neck, and he's like, next time make sure you've got some clothes on before you come in. So aware this guy is naked stood behind him.
I think it's really odd though that the league, sorry, I'll let you speak, sorry, Ellen. Because I got really annoyed by that, because I was a fan of the visual novels of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and obviously
ones, wasn't it?
but they did just make it into a monster movie, you know, and it's the fact of like, obviously Sean Connery's character isn't the main guy, like Alan Quatermain isn't the main guy in the actual things. It's actually Mina's the main character, and then in this one they were like, I mean, I love that the first novel, you don't realize who she is. She's just called Mina, and then you're just like, oh, cool. And then the big reveal later on is, oh, fuck, you're Mina Harker. Like, you're actually a vampire. And then in the movie, they just immediately go, oh, that's Mina Harker. She's a vampire. And then she immediately turns into a bat. And you're like, this is kind of not subtle. But I think that's exactly what you're saying, Jessica, about how nowadays they just go, this needs to be bigger. What you were saying earlier about the old house, The old house, the dark old. I'm turning into Shakin' Stevens. This old house. That was a different monster movie, to be fair. And he's not a paedophile, which is really weird considering the context of most of those Gary Glitter style stars. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, we've had necromancer, necrophilia, now paedophilia. We're getting all the philias out today.
All the philias out there, yeah. Footer
double denim to top it all off as well.
Yeah, okay, no, that is the greatest.
That's the sin. Admittedly. That's the worst one.
However. How we were talking about them being theatre productions, and I think that's why you can't make these Universal monster movies the way that we have them, because there is 3 sets. There's 3 sets for like most of them where you just go, hey, Frankenstein, you literally have the village, like, the castle, a village out scene, and then the lab, and that's it. And, and only like 5 characters, pretty much. And nowadays you couldn't do that. You would have to be like, oh, it needs to be a big cityscape and it needs to have all of these things and all these explosions and the stakes need to be far higher. Like the Invisible Man has high stakes but then they're a bit shit, where he's like, we'll take over the world with this reign of terror by pissing people off randomly. And you're like, he's like, I'll kill a couple of people. I'm like, well, it's going to be slow progress at least. We're not talking like genocide. We're just talking him shanking a couple of people. I don't know. No,
he's going in the shower now with the Invisible Man with the shank.
God!
That sounds like a TV show. Shanking with the Invisible Man.
With prisoner cell block H with the Invisible Man.
but sorry, I've gone off on one. But like League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, it pissed me off, but because it was like a great way of like paying homage to the Universal monsters, but in a kind of left field way. And then the film kind of just went, fuck it, monsters, But I don't know.
It was like they stuck everything in there, didn't they? That like Dorian Gray, you had it was basically just every literary monster or hunter that they could think of just went into this movie. And I don't think they gave enough character enough time.
Yeah.
Like you say, it was just so like glossed over. But I mean,
it's the same as we have with DC movies, where they.
That's what I was going to say.
Oh yeah, how Marvel went like, hey, we'll have some individual films like Iron Man, and then we'll have the ensemble. And DC's just like, no, we'll start with a bloody Justice League. And
this
it's like,
problem,
but who's Cyborg? Who's he?
But the kids, that's why it's exceptionally hard to keep these movies prevalent to a younger audience, because kids are at a point where they've been spoon-fed Marvel movies. I love Marvel movies, don't get me wrong. I think they are fantastic for the genre that they are, and they've done wonders for cinema and comic books and Comic-Cons. Personally, it all works. But what it's done is created this bombardment in an hour to 2 hours of just constant action. Something is always happening. So to sit a kid down and get them to watch something like Dracula or like Frankenstein, where there's, like you say, there's so many silence gaps and not a lot happens for a while, they'll get bored and walk off, or they'll be on their phone, because they need that constant stimulation, because that's all they've been force fed. So
it did take me a lot. Sorry.
These ones, like, obviously to us, like, they're, we know they're like they're terrible, they're schlock, they were a money making quick grab to get a movie out. But I do find it sets the precedence for these kids. I know it has, like, say, for mine, because it was a case of he'd seen this and I was able to show him Boris Karloff, and he's like, oh, I'm interested. And he can spot it anywhere he goes. He's like, it's Frankenstein. I've spotted it.
Love that.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, it was explaining him all these characters came from different books. And he's like, so there's other stories. I was like, there is other stories. I was like, you've got something like King Solomon's Mines, which if I try to hand him the book, he'd probably throw it at me. But being able to get that across, that it's like, this isn't just made, like, out of nowhere. This all comes from a base logic that when you want to dip back in, we can pull that book off the shelf. You can look into it more. And I think, in the same sense as any of us, there'll be something we all saw as a kid. Yeah, it's just like that starts this kind of movie obsession. But our parents will have sat there and gone, "That's a little crap." Way better ones before this, but it's that starting marker.
Yeah,
and it's the easiest way to get like Universal and literary monsters across to kids is these kind of weird low budget complexity. To kids, it computes to them as like,
I think
it's actionable.
I think it's down to accessibility as well now, because like anyone can, like, we're at an age now where content is basically available for anyone, and you can get it anywhere. Where back when, I know this is going to say back in the good old days, well, the old days,
oh my gosh.
it wasn't that easy to get hold of, like content of movies or TV shows. So anything that you kind of that was good or entertaining, you kind of gravitated towards and held on to, and like you used to record on VHS. Like you make sure you got long clear on, to get as much much on as you could, and that's where, like, say, my love of horror came in, because I couldn't get that much horror. So when I used to get it, was like a big kind of like a celebration, or a big kind of like, oh, this is something new. This is something I can take in and watch.
Yeah.
Where now, if I just wanted to watch it, if I'd said, oh, I fancy watching a Freddy Krueger movie, I wouldn't have to go to Blockbusters or just get the Sky Guide out and see when it was next on. I would just literally turn on the Fire Stick and type in Freddy Krueger or Nightmare on Elm Street. It was the same with these type of movies, because they used to be on like BBC One, BBC Two, around about 11 o'clock till 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday night, because for some reason Friday nights used to be the horror nights when we were kids. On Eurotrash,
Start of the weekend.
Used to watch Eurotrash first, get them urges out of the way.
That's the truth.
And then
Bit Lola Ferrari.
Yeah, just Lola.
Yeah,
just like,
Lola.
for a gay man, Christ. I was just like, what are those?
For a straight woman, that was...
That was like, Jesus, is that what's going to happen?
We could always hope, but yes.
I did, and it didn't.
There's still time, I'm not dead yet.
Yay. Can I just go back to what Dan was saying earlier about pace, about, you know, how the kids are so overstimulated with, you know, Marvel movies or even action movies today. I've got to admit, it took me a long time to slow down, to actually be able to accept the pace of it, because I love old movies. I watch quite a lot of them, not like horror. Like I watch a lot of Marilyn movies and Jean Harlow movies and other Rita Hayworth, but their pace is what you would expect. When it came to these movies, with it being horror, I was like wanting to, like, I felt like I needed to move along, but I kind of appreciated how slow it took us to get there. I think I found a new appreciation for patience.
So you've
Does
got
that
patience.
make any sense?
No,
I am not a patient. I'm not a patient person.
Yeah.
I wanted, if I pressed a button, I want that button to react now, not later.
I think that solidifies, obviously, why Universal is so iconic, because realistically, these movies should not work to go and watch now. They still hold up. You can still appreciate the sheer amount of work that went into films like this. They were being really intelligent with their choices.
Yeah.
They're quite short movies as well. They're not exactly really the feature length you get now.
Why I knew I would get a lot in this weekend.
Cram that much information into a film, like, with not a lot to work with. So you didn't have major special effects. You couldn't have everything blowing up all at once, because that's like your entire set's gone. You wait till the last day to kind of right now we can set the windmill on fire because we don't need it anymore. Nobody go wrong.
What, you haven't turned the camera on?
Oh god damn it. You don't
We're gonna need another windmill.
But you don't realise you're watching a masterclass of acting as well.
Yeah. And
you're literally watching these guys like masterclass you in how acting is. It's brilliant.
And how to hold a room, isn't it? It's how to hold a room. That's the stare. That's why I find it so sad that Lugosi died penniless. I mean, he died in a little flat in California, in LA, and Frank Sinatra paid for his funeral.
Oh, I didn't know Frank Sinatra. I knew his funeral. I knew his son and one of his ex-wives was because he never requested to be buried in the Cape. They made that decision for him. Thinking that that's what he would like. I did not know Frank Sinatra paid for his funeral.
He was so sad because the whole Italian connection thing. I'm still not sure if he was a mafioso or not. You know, a part of the mafia, but. Apparently Frank didn't like the idea of him being in a pauper's grave, so he wanted to make sure he got the burial that someone of his standing deserved. So Frank
I love
Sinatra paid for his
that.
funeral.
It's
Yeah.
crazy though. Like when we have
Bill Lugosi, because it is absolutely heartbreaking. Being the guy that started it, and as the films progressed, they forgot about him. He went back to doing it on stage, and people were practically laughing at him of just like, this is so
it was
now.
like he became the joke. He became the butt of a joke that just was. It should never have been like Boris Karloff never got that kind of attention as much Bela did with how.
Again, I think it's the third with Frankenstein films where Bela Lugosi reappears as Igor. Boris Karloff made sure that he got paid the exact same amount that he got paid for that movie, even though he wasn't the main character. And he was like, out of pure respect that this guy gets paid properly, we're not paying him, next to nothing.
They always like to make a thing about their relationship that they were feuding with each other, but they really were not. It was like anything further from the truth with them two. I know his family had a huge deal with Edward D. Wood Jr. They thought he kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? God, I can't think of the words. They were using him. Like Ed was using him for money and using his name and everything, when people on the other side of the argument were like, but we got to remember we remembered him through the movies he did when he did Plan 9 from Outer Space, and I think he did another one where he was just a voice in it. But yeah, his family were not happy with him at all, and I can't think of the word that they used.
But it's crazy to think that, like, I didn't know that. I didn't know Bela Lugosi died in a pauper's grave, and it's the same as like Tesla. Like Tesla died, in obscurity pretty much, and it's almost like capitalism's a pile of shit. It's almost, as if like, hold on, can we just change the filter to be red, and I'll go into a big monologue. Can you play the International?
Are you getting on your soapbox?
And I'll get on my soapbox. No, but that's terrifying, but I love that respect. I did not know about the Bela Lugosi connection there, but that's beautiful that he got him paid what he deserved to be paid.
I think this is often why we find at the moment, and it's weird that I have to keep going back to Brendan Fraser, coming into context for all of this, but yeah, someone like Brendan Fraser, obviously, unfortunately, blacklisted from Hollywood for a major amount of time, obviously for a horrible case as well. And this thing that now he's back and everyone's in such spot, because no one wants to see that happen again. No one wants to see someone so iconic who gave so much be allowed to be pushed out anymore. Now it's a case of like, no, Hollywood doesn't get to do that anymore. Fans won't allow it. And I mean, the Oscars obviously is just kind of proven that, where we've got not just him.
I think it's a change now, which hasn't, especially with Hollywood or the big stars and stuff. The nice guys, like, always did finish last. Like the nice guys used to get pushed out. Like, it always, like, you had to be a bellend or a twat or a Christian Bale to get across, to get anywhere.
And the narrative is starting to change, though. I mean, these ones, they're the ones that are getting called out now, going, like, we don't want them in the films anymore. We're sick of it. Chris Pratt, everyone's sick of it. Everyone knows he's awful. He's a terrible human being.
He was good in Dungeons and Dragons, so I'll be honest. I enjoyed that.
No, he's not that. That's
Chris Pine. Sorry, Chris Pine. Sorry.
Oh, we like Chris Pine. He's the nice Chris.
Yeah.
Team America.
Yeah.
But isn't that terrifying though, that we're talking like that took 100 years? Because we're talking about how badly the director treated the star in like The Mummy, and how badly we were treating like Boris Karloff and stuff. And it's this idea of going, oh, we're finally getting to this, and you wonder if it sticks. But like Hollywood,
not
is
really. James Cameron still works as well, so
we have to say it's a viper's nest of bastards, basically.
That's Hollywood.
Hey, pedos and bastards. Yay, lovely. Enough about our government.
Hand in the Screen Actors Guild, putting in a bit of rights for actors. They couldn't be underpaid anymore. They couldn't be made to do more like inhumane working conditions and everything. He was one of the biggest advocates for it, that a respect factor started to come in, that they're not just commodities to
Yeah.
be thrown around across studio sets.
But that's the thing, yeah, because back in the day, and you weren't like you couldn't just work for different studios or different films. You were owned by a studio. So
Yep.
as you said with Universal, they had a contract. You could only work for Universal. So the roles that they probably did miss out on, or just because they were contractually obliged to be like either Universal or MGM or like the big names back then. It's amazing that they got away with that, because again, it's almost like forced labor type thing. I'm not going to use the S word because I'm not bringing that all into it. But being very
not
careful.
Scunthorpe, is it?
Yes, Sunderland again.
Graeme.
I'm sorry, I said that. Actually, that includes a bad word, doesn't it? But how scary is that, though? That they could control you in that way? Because I was watching a documentary about Bette Davis about like last year, and it was the idea of, if you didn't do what the studio wanted you to do, then they'd be like, you're under contract, we're going to give you a shit part in this movie kind of thing, or we're not going to give you the leading role, so you do what we tell you to do, you be what we want you to be. And it's like, the chauvinism is insane, like in terms of going, hey, you're not pretty anymore, you play the old hag now. And it's like, and I'm in contract and I have to do this. Or you have to buy yourself out of contract.
Which they never did. They never did it. And Vera Mills
didn't Joan Crawford pay off her contract so that she could work with somewhere else, and then it all fell through and
it all fell apart? Something like that. I know Vera Mills in Psycho, she was a Hitchcock girl, contracted Hitchcock girl, and they hated each other. They absolutely hated each other, and he kind of bumped her to the role that she plays in Psycho, which as her standard, she shouldn't have been playing that secondary role. And even her scream is not her scream. It's replaced by Janet Leigh's, because again, he just didn't fucking like her. And that was the last movie, and it was almost like he really put like a stain on her name, because she was so big up until the point, and Psycho was going to be huge, and it was, but he knew it was going to be massive, and he knew having her as a secondary name was just like, fuck you.
But did you ever see what he did to Tippi Hedren, though? I mean,
fucking hell.
That was, I mean, I know we're going off course here slightly, but it's more about the fact that Hitchcock at that point had such an ego. And the things that he put her through, throwing live birds at her constantly until they scratched her, and he told her if she didn't do this, and he would say to her, if you don't do this, you'll never work in Hollywood ever again. And she was either married and she was having children, or just had a kid, or she was getting married. I know there was something going on, and he did his damn best to try and split her and her husband up, or her husband to be up, because he was so obsessed with her to a level that was disgustingly and he's horrible.
He did it with all of them apart from Janet Leigh.
There's a dark undertone about Hitchcock. So the wording always is basically any leading lady had to sleep with him to be the leading lady. But this is a good man. Most of them, most of his leading ladies are blondes.
Yeah, they're all leading blondes.
And one of the weird sort of underlying context with it was he'd spent a long time hunting down trying to get Marilyn Monroe in a film, and she downright refused, because she knew that was the thing you had to do, and she said, I will never do it. And it's weird because you go back and watch it and you can see it. He was trying to get anyone as close as possible to Marilyn, and he had some kind of insane obsession.
He was never getting her.
That woman. But hugely misogynistic, hugely horrific person.
Yes.
And it's always really bad because it's iconic of his point in horror, but it's really hard to enjoy it. Because I'm just kind of
we have this so much though, where we have these things where you're like, like music artists where you're just like, oh god, they're horrible, but I love this. Like a mate of mine who's a DJ is like, can I not play Lost Prophets anymore? Can I please?
Absolutely not.
It's that thing of just being like, but stuff like that, and you just go, oh bollocks. But But to tie it back to Universal, it's the fact of like Hitchcock, like the arrogance of him coming out at the beginning of his films and having this big monologue of, oh, this is a Hitchcock production. And then like, which is the Universal film where they do that, where it's saying, it's not.
They did it, Frankenstein.
Yeah, and they talk about it, and I love that. I love that little sort of like, and is it weird though that they're just going like, this is a monster movie, you might be shocked. I love that. Like, I think everything
giving them like a prior warning.
Yeah.
But going back
every
to
OnlyFans video should start with that same monologue. It's like, some of you might be frightened, some of you might be shocked.
But going back to the Universal horror as well, what movie would you say scared you the most as a kid? Because mine was The Mummy. When I first saw The Mummy, I was absolutely terrified, like to the point where I didn't watch the movie all the way through.
I've not actually seen The Mummy, and none of them scared. But Creature freaked me out for the reasons I mentioned earlier, but nothing's like truly scared as.
I think it's of the time, though, isn't it? I mean, if we were around in the 20s and 30s and you had the expendable cash to be able to go to the cinema and see these kind of things, because only the upper class people would have done back then.
They were very fancy. Did you know they were called Nickelodeons?
Yeah, they paid a nickel.
I did not know that. I was like, oh my God, I've just learned a thing.
But yeah, I mean, it would have been a certain echelon of person that was a privy to watching such a thing. And like when you see the when they did the premiere of The Exorcist in 70 something, they people were fainting and passing out because it was unlike anything they'd ever seen. I imagine to a degree those people that watch those original films, like you try and analyze it from the point of view that you're watching a film about a crazy man who's determined to build the perfect person out of dead bodies, and he goes to a cemetery, digs them up, he sews them together, he gets it struck by lightning and reanimates all these corpses into one huge giant man. And that's unlike anything any of them would have ever known, unless they'd read the book, which by the way I still find to this day was amazing that Mary Shelley didn't have a pen name. She didn't go under a male pen name. No, she stayed with being a female and getting a book published in 1816.
Is that when it was?
That's when it was around then. It was early 1800s. So when you look at it from that point of view, that in itself was a huge thing. That
should have been tried as a witch at some point, though. So
yeah. But I imagine that when you went to see Frankenstein and they came out and they said, "Oh, this will be a terrible movie. You cannot watch such a thing with such fragile women in the audience," and I imagine they were being very much like, "Oh, I can't watch this is absolutely frightful," and I wish I had those eyes to be able to go back and see those things for the first time, where I hadn't been spoilt with so much choice just constant fodder. That
you've got so much knowledge of movies and movies that have been before and past that this is the first time they could potentially be seeing something like this, like ever. And I cannot wrap my head around what that would feel like.
Because we can imagine things. When we read novels, we have the back catalogue of movies and just we know how reanimating a corpse is going to look in our heads because we've got the prior knowledge of it. But reading that book for the first time and thinking, how did they do that? They couldn't have possibly done that. And then to see it translated into a movie and them actually thinking, oh my God, this is possible. Someone who is crazy could actually do something like this. Yeah. They can't. But, in 1931, when they made the film, probably not.
I think Graeme's on mute. I think he's muted himself.
Yeah, audio's gone there.
But yeah.
I'm not saying anything, but there'll be a YouTube tutorial coming soon or something for like how to animate.
How to reanimate someone.
It'll be the next TikTok fucking fashion, everybody be reanimating corpses on their 30-second TikTok.
That's what I was going to say earlier, though. Like the idea of when we're talking about the context nowadays, it's like everyone has shorter attention spans now, like kids. Like I remember showing like someone who's a lot younger than me, like a French and Saunders sketch as an example of like comedy. And they were just like, oh, it's so slow. Oh, it's so, and it's because it's like nowadays it needs to be bang, 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 like TikTok style. And I don't get that. I'm like, there's no setup, there's no payoff, it's literally just a stupid thing and then it's over. But no, like what you were saying there, like how scary it is that Mary Shelley is credited in Frankenstein like as her husband. So she's Mrs. on the credits, and doesn't she come up where it's basically Mrs. whatever her husband is? And you're like, even then they're refusing to acknowledge.
But for Bride, they use her in Bride, they use her name. Because even though Bride doesn't technically exist as a Mary Shelley book, it was alluded to in the book towards the end, and then they freeballed this whole Bride of Frankenstein story, if I'm right. So
because the film opens lovely, because it is actually Elsa Lanchester as well playing Mary Shelley where they're sat, and I always love the scene because there's something kind of cute about the opening of like her, I think it's her husband and their friend, or
I think so,
it's her husband.
Like, like your last story was so good, how did you do it? Come on, you must have another one for us. And then they just sort of like sit down, like kind of, you know, like the most like cute stuff, like everyone sit by the fire, I'm going to tell you a little story.
Yeah.
And to come out of the mind to come out of the mind of such a young woman as well. You know, she was 19, I think, when she wrote it.
Oh, wow.
She was very, very young. So for something that fucked up to come out of a 19-year-old woman in the early 1800s brain, she would have been committed. I don't know how she wasn't. And that's not me being rude. It's just for the time, I would have thought.
Her friends were nutters. So the fact is, you know, it was the idea of like all of them where they're just going, because I've forgotten it, because the tale is obviously that they challenged each other to write a horrible story, and they each wrote like something horrible, and some of them, you know, and they're equally iconic. But Mary Shelley like knocked it out. But I love that it's in The Bride of Frankenstein. That scene at the beginning is almost, I saw it as like an apology for them belittling her or not giving her the acknowledgement she deserved in the first one. That they're like, actually, we're going to make sure that you know who Mary Shelley is, and you know that this was done by a woman. Because in terms of literature, like you're saying, she didn't have a pen name. She's, you know, and it's fucking hell. Like, you know, a woman like writing one of the best stories ever in a fucking man's world at the time is, you know.
The opening titles are something I like as well, because there's something really clever about it. So because they always open with like telling you who the cast is. Like now you get it at the end, but you get it at the start. Elsa's listed as being Mary Shelley, and then it's when it brings up and the bride, it's just a bunch of question marks, which I love, because it's like you've seen her at the start, and it's not till the end you kind of go, hang on a second, I recognize this person. Holy shit, it's the same actress. Like it's one of those weird kind of. I always find it really clever where they did it, with, like throwing you off.
Didn't they not credit Boris Karloff in Frankenstein?
Yeah.
But what did they put for it? Was it question marks, or was it just, because I remember he's not credited for it.
I think it was just dots. I think it was the monster, it said, and then just lots of dots.
Wasn't that the joke, because it was meant to be parts of the person? So I kind of got that as like a joke, like their type of humor, because like the monster wouldn't be one actor, it would be parts of a human.
Oh, parts of everyone else.
An ensemble cast.
Yeah.
With Boris's head.
Because he hadn't really done a lot at the time, so he wasn't like a huge name. They spotted him and like, this is, because they could never work out how they wanted the monster to look. So it took them the longest time to make this film, as they could not get it right. And I'm sure it's a case of he was at the studios doing something else, and someone spotted him, went, I need to sit him in a chair. Like his face is perfect. And they built it from there. So it's like a stroke of luck for him, because his career was teetering on the verge of him not acting anymore.
Right.
And it happens when the premiere, they didn't even invite him to the premiere.
Really?
Oh. He was not acknowledged to be there, because it was a case of, well, you were just the guy and you were just the monster. Like, you're not the main actor. And it was a huge misstep for Universal, because everyone was kind of like, no, we want to know who this guy is. There's the importance. And it is wild, because he's like the biggest name of Universal. Everybody knows Boris Karloff. At first, I'm thinking no one would really care. He just happened to look right. That was it.
And then you get to see how amazing he is as an actor in The Mummy, where like I loved him in The Mummy. Like it's like the little Yeah, where the close-ups of his face and stuff. It's so dramatic. It's so wonderful. But like, yeah, I don't think people would have the attention span for these films now. Like,
No.
but the same you're saying about like Boris Karloff and how iconic he is there, and like the same as Bela Lugosi in Dracula, is one of my favorite scenes is probably the most boring scene for a kid nowadays, which is the Battle of Wills with Van Helsing. I absolutely love that because it's effectively just two people staring at each other, and
a step forward and a step back.
Yeah, that's it. And he's just like going like, just with a distance, and it's like so this. Good though. Like, and I love that the film makes Van Helsing a likable character.
Oh, I see him. I see him
down. There he is.
But no, with Paul asking, I'm seeing anyone that scared. Now I'm not, I'm not even sure if it goes under Universal or not. I'd have to double check this one. It's a film called White Zombie.
It is
really old. It is.
I think it is. It's Bela. Yeah, it's definitely Bela Lugosi, and I believe it is. I'm going to Google it while I've got it open. I do believe that White Zombie is Universal. I'm positive.
There is this scene in it, and like I remember distinctly as a kid. I remember it sort of. I don't know. There's something really unnerving about it now. Looking at it, it's nothing. I think it's the female character sat in like a little cabin, and it pans to the window, and there's this guy just staring at her, and the light does that beam thing across. It's like his entire eyes are white. There's nothing in them, and he's pure like dead set face, just staring at her. And the camera stays there for quite a bit. And see, I was watching these really young, so I'm talking like maybe about 6, 7 to 8-year-old this era of watching these films. And that one came about, and it was one that was like, can we turn this one off? Because whatever that was, I don't like it. Like that's.
No, I think that was the same with The Mummy as well. Like when I was a kid, it was just because there's nothing terrifying, but it's just uncomfortable. Like and I always love. Again, when you watch movies now, everything's so fast paced and going at like 90 miles an hour, but everything was so slow and methodical and thought out. Even like the creature, I was pissing myself laughing like on a boat, and it's got this big 7-foot monster who's creeping about and like the most like you couldn't miss it even in the world, and he's like be able to get around this boat going go. But
did he just do that a lot?
We couldn't work out what noise, what like animal that was supposed to be, because we were watching it last night, the creature, and I kept going to the other half and going, "What animal is that?" He went, "It sounds like a strangle," and we were just like, we couldn't work out what that was, because usually you can go, "Oh, that sounds like a lion," or it's and it didn't even sound cat-like. It had such a strange like. I don't know, but it's an animal, and you can't put your finger on it.
Yeah.
But it didn't sort of suit the creature though. To me, it's like
it was like
his noise was a bit weird. But talking about we were talking about remakes earlier and how they've not worked. Did you not think The Shape of Water was kind of a good one for creature, or do you not see that just because it's not a Universal?
It wasn't a Universal, it was a retelling, but they've done the story of the creature from like we've done so many different times. They've had it in Buffy, they've had it in Supernatural. It is a staple type thing. So the elements will always be still, and like I say, it's a fish man being taken away and from his element, and this woman starts banging him because she's in the fish, but still.
I could have done without the bestiality. I could have done without it.
Yeah. I mean, and that X-Files episode, the amazing worm, the Worm Man X-Files episode in season 2.
Yeah.
That is terrifying, and I see that as like an adaptation of like Black Lagoon.
I think Shape of Water was interesting because it still has all the base logic but it's like a refined. It's Del Toro as well, so he has this whole thing over fairy tale-esque.
Yeah,
kind of like it's always like I can't think of the word, like a blueprint of his films. There's always this fairy tale aspect. What I'm really interested by is, because it's not obviously going to be universal, like Shape of Water wasn't really. But he's coming in now with wanting to do a version of Frankenstein as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, because this is what he wanted to do with it. The reason you have The Shape of Water for is because he went to Universal and went, I want to do Creature from the Black Lagoon. And they went, absolutely not. And he went, right, no problem. I'll see you later, and did Shape of Water. So he'll do exactly the same thing. White Zombie was filmed on Universal's lot,
right?
But it wasn't exactly a Universal movie. It wasn't their production.
I'm right in saying they cast Andrew Garfield, didn't they? Or he's talking about Andrew Garfield.
I think so far the names that are floating that he's looking at, Andrew Garfield definitely, Mia Goth as well, which I get the feeling she will be the bride.
Who's Mia Goth?
For Del Toro, for her looking so obscure, because she's an obscure looking woman, it fits Del Toro's kind of view of his version of the obscure bride.
Yeah,
with the original, not conventional.
Oh yes, I know who you mean.
She had a baby with Shia LaBeouf.
Poor girl.
No.
Yeah,
she did. The first thing that came up was the first thing that came up was partner Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
I just think you look at Shia LaBeouf, I think that'd just be disappointing. Like nothing about
I can definitely see Andrew Garfield as like the scientist that like actual Frankenstein. I can see that him being. Let's be honest, Andrew Garfield can't do no wrong, so it'd be quite an interesting take.
I don't know if it was, I don't know what you want to class it as, the one where you had James McAvoy and Harry Potter gone blank, Daniel Radcliffe as Igor. That wasn't bad. I didn't hate that. I know they're all like sidebar stories, and I'm intrigued about Renfield. That's going to be a shit show because it's Cage.
It's going to be so
because it's Cage. It's going to be terrible in every way.
But you'll love it.
Terribly fantastic.
What we do in the shadows, to me, I'm like, isn't this the story we've been seeing in What We Do in the Shadows with Guillermo and Nando? I'm like, it feels like the exact same thing.
Oh, they're just getting the map. Bless her. But
I take my chances. You know?
No, that's fine.
I would love.
I would say if anyone's seen the Kenneth Branagh version of Frankenstein.
Yes.
Oh yes. Oh, that's beautiful.
Robert De Niro, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is wild to me. Like every time, I love the film, but I still have to sit there and go,
"That's Robert De Niro."
Yeah, I would never have expected.
Yeah, it took me a while as well.
I think if you're going to do like a reinvention of Frankenstein again, it's all about the monster. You can have the best actors as well, and that's where the James McAvoy one fell apart for me. The monster was overdone on CGI. Just take it back. Simpler practical effects do work. I make the body parts look disjointed, but you can do amazing things, and they proved it with these movies that they don't have to be like these CGI spectacles. But
absolutely not. I saw it on stage.
It's tough though. Like, what is Frankenstein? Because the fact is, there's so many different ways you can take it. You can take it with the original novel, where you're basically talking about, because it's a fairly religious novel of basically, science getting out of hand and man sort of overstretching his reach kind of thing, and also the. Can you bring life? You could even make an abortion sort of like story on it, of the idea of bringing life into the world that you don't know how to deal with, and that you don't care about, because the creature is bad because he's treated bad. Like, you can do that, or do you want to make it about the scientist and about his
it's about a god complex to me.
Yeah.
It's about one man who thinks that he's got this idea and it's eating him alive, and till he sees if he can execute this idea, he will never rest. And once he does, he realizes and he gets the clarity, instantly he knows it was a mistake. He knew. You could just tell, I've achieved what I wanted, but this wasn't what I wanted,
It's that line you were saying about the God complex. That line he says, "Oh dear God, now I know how it feels to be a god."
Yeah.
And he kind of goes into this almost catatonic state
because he realizes
it goes on for quite some time before. Because normally they're very good at cutting scenes very quick.
Yeah.
And moving on to the next one. With that one, they leave it a little bit longer, and you get to see like how much of a catatonic state he actually is in by what he has just done.
Yeah.
Has anyone gone through the Penny Dreadful series?
No, but it always
tried.
intrigued us.
I only watched the first season and I loved it, and I don't know why I didn't watch season 2.
I've done them. I've
It
done
was
them.
really
Yeah,
good.
I've
Their
done all of them.
twists on the monster and the bride
Mm-hmm.
are really interesting.
Yeah.
I think the monster in that is closer to the original story of him trying to understand human emotion and why people act the way that, why are people so bloody horrible?
Yeah.
Everyone's just awful to their core. The bride I adored. I think that might be my favorite version of, other than the original.
And it was Rory Kinnear, wasn't it, who played, and it was Billie Piper who played the bride.
Oh, interesting.
It is Billie Piper. I know a lot of people go, "Oh, it's Billie Piper."
No, that's
She's
the
really
only
good,
thing.
bizarrely. You know, it's
Yeah.
I
she's
didn't
very
expect this
good.
at all. Considering when you hear her music career and you're like,
Because we
that's a
want
choice.
to. Because we want to.
Yeah, it's like,
It's the story context that come about with her that I love. Is you get to see Proteus, who's the second maid.
Mhm.
Proteus and the monster have their issues. They're not quite perfect. She comes out, but so intelligent, like scarily so. She is ahead of everybody in that.
Mhm.
Even to the point of the context of the story of her building up every woman in the city that's ever been wronged and take them out like an army. Kill every man you find. It doesn't matter if they've done anything
Yeah.
Kill them because they're the
I'm
worst.
Yeah.
It's a
Oh,
brilliant
yes.
story because they connect her into Dorian Gray with them both being immortals.
Yeah.
Oh.
She looks at the monster like, kind of,
Oh, you're making me want to
no,
watch this.
like, you're so
Yeah.
weak. You're so weak. We're still crying over people. Like, we're bigger and better.
Yeah.
Come on, we could literally rule the place.
Wow.
It works well with Dorian because he's that arrogant.
He's a dick.
But the narrative
He's a
goes
proper
on,
dick.
even for Dorian, she's too much.
Yeah.
She's too scary now. Like, nothing will ever stop this woman. And she's picked up everything about them all, how they'll use her, because she's just a neat woman.
Wow.
She's fantastic.
Mm.
They ever did another movie, that's the version I want to see even more fleshed out.
Yeah, but that goes on with like the thing I was going to ask as well, because Dan, like with her saying that, like as you said, if they're going to do a new Frankenstein Del Toro version, would you want them to be standalone movies, or do we want like the dark universe as what was promised before? Do you want like the interconnected, like the Marvel experience, shall we say?
No.
No,
Leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
Leave it alone.
It's very hard to interconnect a bunch of characters that were not all written by the same person. You've got to somehow crowbar them together. It's always going to come up with some crap story of kind of like, well, we have to band together now. And it's like, these guys are written so separate to each other.
Yeah.
Why?
That's such a good point.
Well, you look
I think Penny Dreadful's the closest they got.
To talk about, like, sat round kind of having like a cup of tea. What context can they ever have a conversation of like, do you live in the water?
The only thing that has worked in is the Monster Squad.
Yes.
That is the only time you've been able to get those key characters. You've got the Gill Man, you've got the Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, you've got
Wolfman's got nods.
Yeah. So that's the only film, I think, because it was done in a satirical way in that universe of when the Goonies and all that was coming out. It was about 1987, 1988, I think that came out. So in that, and they have Van Helsing in it as well, if I remember.
Yeah.
So they managed to shoehorn them all in, but it worked because it was for kids.
It was
and
it's brilliant.
Yeah, and I just want to say I love you, Dan, for getting a Goonies reference in without I didn't even have to say it. So thank you.
I watched you smile. I saw you like, I didn't do it this time.
But yes, I've just thought of one, like, again, I don't know if it was Universal that did it, but the recent Invisible Man that we got.
What happened is after me and Ian had watched all of these films all day, he was like, now I want to watch a film that I like. No, we would. But but he basically said we're gonna put the new Invisible Man on. And I loved that because that horrified me.
So good. Michaela said it was brilliant.
It's genuinely amazing, but it did horrify me. It did actually genuinely freak me out. Like the bit where people just get killed, like, you know, like when the throat slitting bits.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, I don't like this at all. But it points out like The Invisible Man is a very satirical film to start with. Like it's ludicrous where he's just like, oh, he took loads of chemicals and he went nuts and now he wants to take over the world. And you're like going, okay, this is a very odd concept. But the you know, in the remake, it's going, no, think about how terrifying, and it does everything, every horrible thing that you could do by being able to be invisible to someone is in that film.
Yeah.
I thought it was amazing.
There's the middle ground one as well of Hollow Man.
Yeah.
It's done this.
Oh, that's got some creepy moments in, hasn't it?
Hollow Man, yeah, because it's, you know, at first the reason why he's doing it is actually to try and progress their work, like medically.
Yeah.
And he's another one like a major god complex that he can't wait. He has to prove that he's done it. And the same thing happens. He goes insane over time. No. The contemplation,
scientists
you'll never
can't
see
keep it
your own
sane.
face again. You're never actually going to be whole. Sends him insane. But how creepy he is as well.
Because he becomes obsessed with Elizabeth Shue, doesn't he? Like Bacon.
Who doesn't? Who wouldn't come obsessed with Elizabeth Shue? To be fair.
But there's a terrifying scene in it, and it's all very alluded to what he's done. There's this woman he keeps looking at.
Yeah.
Another one who likes to look through the window at people.
Creep.
Not hitting us men in a good light, these films, I'll tell you. But yeah, going back, like say, like the modern type take, like the domestic violence element to it really did get to me as well. Like, because that's what men would use it for, and like as a man saying that, it scares me to think like if someone got that power, they would use it for them type of means. You can actually see, and you hear stories in the newspapers or even by talking just to your friends, like hearing people getting like how they've been stalked by like exes or stalked by people online. Like with us being such an online like presence now, like people like harass us to a degree at times as well, which sounds weird saying, but if people had them type of like elements of,
am I going to get harassed after this?
no,
I don't think you. No, I'll
She's like, what did I sign up for?
You might just get some socks by Martin, but that's a different story.
But you wonder if though that this is the way to adapt the Universal films for the future, where like we're saying, the Invisible Man, like the original one, he gets megalomaniac, you know, in it. Whereas this one, it's not the fact he's invisible in the remake. Well, no, the not remake, the newer one. That's like a plot device rather than the whole point of the film.
Yeah.
The point of the film is about an abusive like stalker ex.
Yeah.
And then the invisible aspect is like, oh, wouldn't it be horrible if he also could do this?
Oh,
like, and I think that's the way
that's actually
made
me go cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's horrible.
I do want to watch it. Michaela couldn't speak more highly of it today when we were talking about these films. So I will give it a watch.
I will say though that with the Invisible Man, I'm not the biggest fan of Elizabeth, whatever her name is from the hand. Yeah, that I'm not. I don't really. But she played it well. She played it like it's the thought of. It's a common theme of the story, like you say, the stalker ex that, given the opportunity or the money, can do whatever he likes. And that is a current issue that they've addressed with the loosely idea of the Invisible Man. So, I mean, I'm not opposed to them taking movies and reimagining loosely based off the original idea. But as we well know, after the Psycho debate we had on the last one, a shot-for-shot remake doesn't work
pointless.
For anybody.
It's a pointless.
Yeah.
No, it's
absolute
just
pointless. So
it's if you can add something to it or give us something different, or just like so you can tell the same story, just do it a different way. But doing a shot-for-shot remake for these, like the end, I'll be honest, the endings would be the most unsatisfying endings to any movies. Because let's be honest, I don't know if you guys watching it back. I've loved the movies up until the end because these guys don't know how to end a film. That's been my takeaway for a lot of, like, the Wolfman is like, oh, he's dead. I've got the cane. The end. Dracula, Van Helsing's putting him, get up the stairs. The end. And it's just like
Stephen King. It's the Stephen King school of writing,
yes.
isn't it? Let's be honest.
I mean, I wonder though. I'm going to ask you, like, how would you adapt these in the context of what I was saying about the Invisible Man for the modern day? Like, I would quite like to adapt Dracula, but make it about real estate. So make it about the hardcore world of the real estate, and then one of his clients is like, oh, he's wanting to buy this abbey, and he's wanting, I think that'd be a really bizarre way of taking it.
That like, would be so
Jesus
crazy.
Christ. Yeah, like, no, but then, like, they find out, like, oh, all these people are dying. What's that? Oh, you sold the abbey to this vampire. I don't know.
I think it is now, yeah. Any sort of adaptation, it's because obviously things have moved on so much over time. It's suddenly taken a new perspective, like what would be the drive now? Like the original drives aren't quite the same. The last version of Dracula done by Stephen Moffat.
Yeah, the TV.
They adjusted Dracula with
that was the BBC one.
Yeah.
The twist I enjoyed was the terminology of the fact that every time he fed, it gave him something from that person. He was utilizing it. So he wouldn't just eat anything. It's like, does it have something of a purpose I need?
Yeah.
Particularly a scene when they're on the boat. And he realized he has forgotten now how to speak. It's German. And he goes around the boat and he tries to work out, right, this one speaks German, right, I'm going to take you. And within minutes, he sits back down at the table speaking it perfectly. And all of a sudden doing this more refined, kind of purposeful. And he does, like, when he's being asked certain questions, just like, come on, like, I'm not heathen. Like, I'm picking and choosing. Like, I wouldn't just go for anything. What's mine? Like,
it's very almost Hannibal Lecter of him to do that, because that's what he was about, taking the imperfections out of the world.
I love
leaving the perfect.
Yeah,
taking these new perspectives of logic and putting them into these older characters that they would maybe, and some of them make more sense now, some of them not, because the Mummy, Tom Cruise. Others worked.
But the thing is, I think the Mummy was always going to be a film just because they did the Brendan Fraser, which was basically a cross between Indiana Jones and the Universal horror. So taking elements out of like that will work. I do think, like, probably not movie wise, these would work as well. Probably TV shows, or like, as you said, like the Del Toro Cabinets of Curiosity have like a universal, like even almost like a Twilight Zone aspect. Have someone come out, like as it did with someone introducing the movie, saying, "Today we're going to the depths of the Amazon, where we're doing a dig," and what they were finding was not what they were expecting. And then
how he opens those episodes is beautiful. It reminds me of Clash of the Titans. So when he says what the picture's going to be and who it's going to be directed by, and then puts the figure down, just show you who it's going to be. It reminds me of Clash of the Titans, where he would lift the people off the wall and place them. It was a really good.
I about that like that, but no, it's beautiful. And the idea of these are little vignettes, like, it'd be wonderful to have these little one episode things, like, oh, it's the Wolfman, oh, it's like that, like, that'd be great. And then if it landed well, then you could go, hey, what if they met up, or what if the Wolfman came across Frankenstein's monster or something? Then you would
peeping at the bride Frankenstein through a window with a telescope. So
that's it.
This has led me to this one question then. If anyone could direct that kind of style, like a Twilight Zone, Cabinet of Curiosities, like little small succession of mini movies of the Universal monsters, who could do it?
It has to be Del Toro. I don't think I can imagine anyone but Del Toro doing it, but that might be my limited knowledge.
I think I'm gonna have to agree. I'm gonna say Del Toro.
No,
just for the way that his mind is with monsters.
I don't know if Del Toro would be good, but it would be, like, as you said, Jessica said, too much like a fairy tale, and I don't want these to become fairy tales.
But aren't these folk tales, though? Like stuff like the Wolfman and stuff like, Frankenstein, they're almost like folk tales like on screen. So I don't know.
But if you want a modern feel, go with the man that's got like that can't do anything wrong at the moment, Jordan Peele.
Nah.
I don't know. I don't know.
No.
Yeah, Mark, that is for me. If anyone's ever seen his documentary on horror, he is a wealth of knowledge.
He is, yeah.
He had a hand in the most recent Dracula.
Yeah.
He has such a passion and a love, particularly for where it all came from. If anyone was to do it, he's where my eyes are. After doing Dracula, I'm waiting to see if he does touch any of the other stories.
Oh, wow.
It's not anyone huge or like Hollywood or anything like that, but I think you would get the truest and most respectful version from him. Like, I don't think he'd mess with it too much. He knows what was good about it and what needs to be updated.
Or just
where I'd be watching.
Yeah,
knowing our luck, it would be bloody Blumhouse gets their
that would be a big no for me. But trying to think,
what I was going to say earlier is the fact of, isn't it scary that we're talking about the Universal monster movies and how enshrined they are? Isn't it going to be weird if in 30 years' time people are like looking at the Blumhouse movies like Malignant,
like
or
classic
Insidious,
horror,
or like Conjuring, and they're like, oh, they don't make them like this anymore, and like analyzing them. And I genuinely think that might happen. People might be looking back at the Conjuring 2 being like, oh, cinema masterpiece.
No, if I am dead in 30 years, I will come back and haunt those people. That is not happening.
I mean, to be fair,
I would watch that movie.
The Return of Dan.
To be honest, though, a little bit off field, not talking about horror, but if you're going to go like, say, someone that does appreciate and go for like nerd culture, Edgar Wright.
Yeah. I see what you. Yeah, I get what you mean from the standpoint of that he is very meticulous when it comes to understanding, like you say, pop culture
and fan bases as well.
But it's what he likes, though. He knows what he likes.
Robert Eggers coming in with Nosferatu next is going to be interesting.
I think that is the one guy that could start the words again. That's the one guy that could pull that film off. When you look at all the modern directors now, Eggers, when you've seen his work up until this point, he, I think, is going to smash that out of the park.
Yeah.
But I would be curious, and I'm not saying, because I know this is going to be a controversial one, I'd be curious to see Ari Aster do something to Universal.
That would be interesting.
Because it's his ability to build the suspense and have those quiet moments that Universal.
He's got a lot of patience. Ari Aster's got a lot of patience to build you up to a point of where he wants you to get to, so he would be kind of almost perfect.
I'm not saying it'd be great. I just think it's one of those things where, you know, when you think, okay, I get the Del Toro thing, because to me that's where my brain went.
Yeah,
the guy that loves monsters.
Yeah,
but just to put a spin on it, just to see, I'd be intrigued. And then, you know, if I'm wrong, which I probably am going to be, you may hunt me down and kill me. But it is one of those things where I'm just like, I'd just be curious, because he seems to, like I say, get that suspense. Whereas I don't know any other directors at the moment.
I think this is where we mentioned stuff like Twilight Zone, Tales of Crypt, where something like this would be amazing if they could do a mini series like this, but each one is done by one of these, not one doing all of them, seeing everyone's individual perspective,
like Cabinet of Curiosities.
They're all going to look at it, their personal views of those characters. An anthology like that would be
I love anthology horror.
So yes.
Interesting conversations here. Maybe we should get on the phone to Hollywood.
I'll get on the phone. Hello. Although there's Tito's in Hollywood.
Ideas I've given away on this podcast already. I don't know. But yes, I think that's a nice way just to wrap it up as well, because I've just realised the time and we've got an early morning.
We've got early morning start. I know. I was just texting Donna there just to make sure I got her address before she went off to bed or something.
But yes, thank you guys. I know, like I say, it's not been the most linear podcast, shall we say. It's been a bit all over the place, but I've enjoyed the conversation. I think that's always been the pleasure.
It's been very interesting conversations that have come out of a set of incredibly old films.
Yes, and some very knowledgeable people as well. So you have done his homework. He's done us proud. So yes. So again, thank you for everyone in the chat. You've been chipping away.
Yes, thank you.
Like I say, I know we'll see a few of you guys tomorrow at Nerdfest. Like I say, we'll have a few prizes to give away for the day and some stickers. So come and get a sticker, and remember to lick Goodwill. He likes that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Next week, I think Dan is making a return again next week.
Oh my god, 2 weeks in a row.
It is
the true crime.
True crime next week. Yes.
So, I forgot then. I was like, oh yeah.
This is gonna be interesting. I've got to remember what I did the last time, so I don't talk about it this time.
To be fair, I'm gonna be very...
You can have a new background anyway. Let's just put it
excellent.
It's
coming a thing now.
Scene. So
I'll just kill Rob and then just put him up there as a prop
on the day. There you go.
We'll have a true crime podcast about the podcast. Like only murders in the building. Inception. But yes, can't think of the next ones. Graeme will be back for Star Trekking with Nerdy Up the North for Picard, and I hate you as well just by saying this because you have got me watching Picard now. I have actually been
as you should. We're waiting for the inevitable Keiko O'Brien as the big bad reveal at the end of the series. That won't make any sense to anyone who's not a Trekkie.
No, it does not. Trekkie.
But yes, I have to say, this season of Picard has been amazing, by the way.
It's really good. Like, it's just, isn't it? It's like we're saying about the monsters and stuff. It's the idea of it. Isn't it wonderful when you put something in someone good's hands and they do a good job with it? It's crazy, you know. It's like, but
who'd have thought?
I do want to say while I'm here though on Friday after Picard, because are we doing it live on Friday?
I don't know. I need to speak to Goodwill, so he's
okay.
the man in charge of that.
But basically, I'm doing a thing on Friday that I really want to shout out about, which is that I'm on 9 p.m. Friday through to 9 p.m. on Saturday. We are doing a 24-hour gaming stream for charity. Not to end on a sad note, but basically, a friend of mine is very much using hospice care at the minute, and it's a bad situation. But basically, we want to raise money for St. Benedict's Hospice. So we will be doing it. So we're doing a 24-hour stream. I'm going to be playing a lot of retro games. We're going to be playing a lot of stupid games. So like stuff like Silent Hill 1 for the PlayStation, things like Mega Man and things like that. Ian is an artist and he will be drawing sketches, so you can donate money during the stream to make me do silly things, to make me play games and stuff, like changing hats. There's going to be one where you can pay a lot of money and get me into drag, and I will just start putting on makeup and stuff for the stream while Ian does other stuff. But Ian will be drawing pictures and stuff. So a sketch of whatever you want. So if you want to be like, oh, can you draw Bela Lugosi's Dracula doing this or whatever, you will be able to donate money.
Doing Graeme, so yes.
The aim is
I want that picture.
That's it. The aim is to basically raise money for a wonderful cause.
Oh, that sounds so good.
And stuff. So please join us doing that on my Twitch stream at 9 p.m. And Paul, I'll get you to put the stuff in the comments.
Don't worry.
Whatever.
Down there.
And have you got any more conventions coming up there, Dan?
We've got the Telford Wales takeover in 13th, 14th of May, weekend after Sheffield HorrorCon, which we sponsor, and they've just announced a load more guests for that.
Yeah. I know, I just said one. Do you want to name the one that got me very excited?
And then also Newcastle, just seen that they've announced Charisma Carpenter. For Newcastle. So I'm going to be incredibly poor for that one. Every penny I make, I will be funneling back into it for photos.
And what about you, Jessica? Where have you got any plugs coming up?
I'll be at HorrorCon as well. Awkwardly, in my living room at the moment, I have a live cast of a set of boobs that I'm making for
Excellent.
Don't we all?
Genius if anyone comes to my house and wonders why there's a clear set of boobs in the corner. But yeah, Newcastle as well. I'll be working the weapons stall as usual, so it'll be
I'm working
knackered, just trudging around.
Don't worry. I am coming to the Newcastle one, so I'll try and see, and you'll realise how socially awkward I am in person. As I've been been made aware that it was a year ago this weekend that we had the Nerdy Up North first meetup, where no fucking knew who I was, and I just sat in the corner and let everyone else like kind of crack on and be all cool. Someone actually called me Simon. Said, "Are you Simon?" I was good. You can call me whatever they want. Just leave me the fuck alone.
I was going to say, I think you end up just going, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So people asking us, "Are you part of the Nerdy Up North?" I was like, kinda, yeah, a little bit. But yes, I don't like people. I don't like meeting people. I always feel uncomfortable.
But make sure you come and say hi to us at Nerdfest tomorrow.
Yeah. Yes. Go and lick him. Lick Paul tomorrow. He'll love it. You know.
Yes. You see what response you get if that happens.
Between Goodwill and Paul.
Yes. But yes, Goodwill will be wearing his unicorn hat tomorrow, so like say, please
know where
check
to find
it
us.
out. But yeah, thank you guys. That's been amazing.
Thank you.
So same bat time, same bat channel.
Say nerdy, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.